Hey guys, it's Mir. I am back again with Jarkey Bacon.
Oh, me! Oh, we're back again. Wow, it feels like it's been so
I love
long.
your intros.
Feels like it's been so short. I think I've kind of made it up as we've done this. I don't. Did I do it on Ari's one? I don't know. I maybe made it halfway through. I didn't. It just happened once, and I continued it. And those are the best
So
intros.
it's just me.
It's me. You know who I am.
Well, we're here again with some Planet Tests. The last volume, but not really. So this volume is a bit weird compared to the other volumes, at least. When we were looking at the chapter length, we realized it's pretty much like double the length of a normal volume. And even in publication, this was kind of addressed, and the volume was split into two parts. So there's like a 4.1 and a 4.2. And the way it's split is very weird. So we read through the whole final volume at once. So we've both completed the series. We'll give our kind of overall thoughts on that at a later point. But the way this is split, you have some chapters that are kind of focused on they're not really focused. They all just have their own kind of ideas. And then you get chapter 19, which has the start of an arc for Fee, just completely focused on Fee, and that goes all the way to chapter 24. And then at that point, there's two chapters left to focus on, closing up and what's going on with Hachi. So it's a very strange structure. So the way we've decided to approach it is that we're going to be doing two videos to talk about Volume 4. Part 1, this part, we'll be talking about the Fee arc, which is about the length of a normal volume, so it kind of works out. And then we'll be going back in the next video to talk about the chapters leading up to the Fee arc, including the extra chapter that we forgot to do in the last volume, and then the final two chapters and closing out. So yeah, that's our plan. So expect a part 2 of this kind of soon, but I don't expect this video to be much shorter than the rest.
Yeah,
There's still a lot to
There's
talk about.
still five chapters of Yukimura writing for Planet S. Always going to be a bit dense. Always got a lot to talk about whenever you read it again. Just linking together, feeling more cohesive. Yeah, this is it's probably the most coherent set of plot in a way for a while, but it's still so fast, and it's not in a bad way. It's just Planet S doesn't hold your hand. It's like we're going. And there's a few times I did get a little lost, but rereading always helps, and you understand stuff better. And I think even if you do get lost in the plot of Planetes, like if you get the characters and the heart and the emotional parts still hit, even though I may not understand all the finer details of what's actually going on.
Yeah.
But yeah. And we have some wacky stuff this book.
There's some wacky stuff. I think
real wacky stuff.
The wackier stuff will probably be more part 2-ish, but yeah, this whole volume, like, if you went back and you listened to every video we did leading up to this where we gave our expectations, we never said anything like this volume. It goes against, I feel like, every expectation I had for what the future of this story meant and what it was really going to try to do. But at the same time, it never felt like it was suddenly different, like it was trying to do something else. It is itself throughout the whole thing, and it never really becomes anything different. It just goes about it in a way that at first I don't think you would expect, but once it's done, it doesn't really feel wrong either. In fact, it almost feels like it's the point.
Yeah. I mean, you know this is like, I'd never expected Colonel Sanders to turn up in my in my manga. Let's put it that way. But yeah, there's a lot of wacky stuff. I'm sure we'll get to that. But I was on the Mal page, and you've got the 4 main characters and then Colonel Sanders like on the character list. So it's like clearly he's one of the more memorable one before Lockhart, I think, and other stuff. So
Sanders was actually really interesting. I'm excited to get to him. But yeah, let's just go ahead.
Well, I mean, so there's also later on we'll probably touch on it a little bit. There's like at the end of 24, there's some like extra Yukimura like 4-page or 8 panel things, and it's like it's interesting because one of the characters is mentioned there. It's like the joke is that like Yukimura is too scared to draw her face because she only appears in the anime, and he thinks he's gonna mess it up or something. So that's something that we may also do is like watch the anime and see how we feel about it. I don't know if we'll go on a deep dive of it, but it may be like interesting just to watch. Is it 24 episodes or so?
I believe it's 24. I haven't finished it yet. I watched I think maybe 3 so far, and I quite like it. Okay. But yeah, next video we'll talk a bit more about it. Hopefully I'll have finished it by then, but it's not something we're planning on doing. But
it's 26 episodes. 26. Okay, interesting.
Wow, that's even more. I thought 24 was pushing it. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like we're almost gonna have as many episodes as chapters.
Oh, good point. Yeah, that's like.
But the chapters are pretty long, and we know from Vinland Saga Season 2 that you can take a chapter and make it. And this is a Vinland Saga chapter, so it's not like I guess it's like 36 pages. I don't know how long the pages are in this, but I think it's definitely longer than chapters in general. Yeah. Anyway, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and they also do a lot of anime original stuff that I like. It feels like it has a completely different feel. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it. Actually, I've got so much anime I need to watch. I've got so much stuff I need to play. The issue with making videos that take months to make is that all your free time is spent making that or procrastinating from doing that. So yeah, no, it's gonna be great, and looking very much forward to it.
Okay, let's just do it. Chapter 19. So yeah, we get this arc focused on Fee, and really what the whole arc is focused on is this internal conflict that Fee is having, that plays very deeply into her past and her present as she struggles with complacency and doing the right thing even when society kind of does not agree with you and it kind of goes against the mold. She has this feeling that as she's gotten older, she's become more and more accepting of just how life works, like tough shit kind of thing. And she's kind of just learned to suck it up. And this is contrasted immediately with Tanabe. We've seen throughout her, her whole time in this story since her introduction, she's always the one to speak up against things she kind of disagrees with. And I think this whole arc is just so interesting to me because it almost feels like Yukimura was aware that Fee just wasn't getting a lot of attention. And, we noticed that. We have noted that in the past few volumes that Fee hasn't really gotten a lot of focus. And I wonder if, public opinion as he was writing this was kind of similar and it kind of made him want to write this, or if this was something he had planned the whole time. But it really does feel like he kind of looked at Fee, looked at what he kind of set up with her, and then just came up with a really good idea to just examine her character, why she is the way she is, and how she can grow.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to say, so he did comment on, in one of those small comics he has, it's like, oh, sorry, we're not in this one, are we? Like, the last volume, basically, as a little joke.
Yeah.
Be like Yuri and Fee aren't in it. And I think, yeah, I mean, it does make sense, Yuri had his arc kind of in the first volume, which was pretty focused, but he wasn't ever, he was focused in the first chapter and then he kind of continued on and then, had kind of finished his arc in that first, and then we had Lon Tanabe and Archie. But Fee's always been a little bit, apart from chapter 3, which is referenced in this, Fee's always been a bit in the background, and actually but not even in the background, but just a character that's there, but never the focus.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I think this was very interesting to come back to, and maybe we'll talk about this. Maybe we'll just talk about it now. But so on Twitter, like Yukimura was talking about a few things, and like he made like, and you never know with like Japanese, and you have to use the Google Translate to try and figure out what he's saying. But he like was like talking about, he mentioned something about, I could never imagine a female warrior, or like a Viking warrior that's a woman or something like that, maybe something along those lines. And then someone from Twitter kind of quote tweeted it and like said like, why not, or this is like a bit of a frustrating mindset, like even if it isn't. So I actually had a look into this, so it's like not confirmed if there were actually female Viking warriors. It's been like it's a bit of a hot topic in the archaeological debate side of things, but it's more just like, after this, like people just started complaining about his writing of female characters and how he focuses so much on them being mothers, and like how well, I guess like like say like you have someone like Hild and Gudrid, and they start off as very independent, or particularly like Gudrid wanting to explore the world, and then Gudrid always becomes a very traditional mother, which is fine. It's just also then like Hild as well has become sort of a teacher, and stuff like that. And it's just kind of like, they need, like, I don't know, people feel like Yukimura has a great idolization of women in general, but they're almost like not human to you. Like instead of like talking down to them, he talks up to them and exalts them too much. So it feels like he doesn't quite write them as humans and as complex. But I feel like this is probably just because, I think probably what cleared this up for me maybe more unintentionally was Tryhard's recent video on Thorkel. I'm not sure if you've watched it, I'm not sure if we talked about it, but it's very interesting. But it feels like Vinland Saga is very much focused on a male side of things, and Yukimura kind of affirms this here, but he kind of talks about how it's always men that cause wars and stuff like that, and that's kind of like where Yukimura comes from. And maybe that's not quite true, like in the UK, our first female prime minister was very vocal to go to war against the Falklands, big part of Margaret Thatcher's, what people remember her for and stuff like that. So like women also partake in war as well, but it's just like this idea that Yukimura kind of has. But I feel like as a counter argument to lots of those arguments that we're talking about, Yukimura thinks this about women, or like he kind of puts them into a box, Fee very much breaks that mold in almost every regard. And she's still a mother, but it's like she's not a typical mother at all. She's not a typical female character at all. She's the captain of the ship. Yeah. She's the breadwinner of the household. She is the very independent-minded, but complex character, and she's not put into a box. Anyway, I feel like it's just an interesting perspective because we're two guys here and we're talking a lot about this perspective that we haven't lived, but it's interesting to see this kind of discussion going on. I've heard it from many different places, various different women that have read Vinland Saga and talk about certain aspects that they like and they dislike, and they think, this is represented well and this is not so well. But it's interesting to see that, from what I can tell, I wonder what their perspective on Fee would be, because I feel like Fee is a counter, or like a reassurance that Yukimura actually speaks to women.
I guess. Pretty much. It's really interesting to me, because I get that he is essentially trying to, stay accurate to what to his understanding of that history, right? So he doesn't think I don't. It's obviously not him saying that women aren't capable of anything. Just that obviously traditionally women were like more oppressed from this kind of thing. They weren't
the victims.
Yeah, they were more often to be victims, and like honestly, like historically, it could be completely wrong. Like I'm sure I'm completely ignorant, but it always feels like when you have these stories of these like female like war hero kind of things, like Joan of Arc kind of thing, it's mostly like these stories are being told because of their exceptionalism, because of how they stand out against the norm compared to what the norm is. And I don't know, I feel like if it was such a common, if it was something that's common and should be represented more in Vinland Saga, I almost feel like that's kind of like, I guess, takes away from that part of the exceptionalism. Like, these are people who went against the mold, who were being different and being strong. So I don't know. It's definitely a weird thing, but I think ultimately you're on the nail when you say that it's about his respect and how, because like Vinland Saga is a story that does not like warriors. It's not here to say warriors are cool. Like, sometimes it'll make you think they're cool, but it's very anti-warrior. It sees warrior as like as a very toxic kind of thing. So combine that with the way he views women with so much respect, and you can see why he wouldn't want to put a woman in that position. Why he wouldn't want to depict that, because he believes them to be above it, you know? And I feel like a certain subsection of the fandom is a bit more, I don't know, a bit more interested in the war side of things and the warrior side of things and the kind of world he built with like the prologue and everything outside of the Vinland part of it. And like having more interest in that is fine. But like, then you start creating like your OCs who are these like cool warriors, and you have all these warrior OCs, and then, Yukimura saying like, no, I can't picture that. It's just like, well, no, I can make a character like that. But yeah, it's just a different perspective on these warrior characters than what the author has. And that creates this kind of difference. Because, again, he just doesn't want to put them in that position.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth to remember that Yukimura did most of his research back in 2005. That's a long time for people to find new archaeological finds. For example, he talks about in one of his blurbs, in 2017, they found a tomb in Norway that they thought was a male warrior, but actually turns out, they did some biological reading, and turns out on the bones, and it turns out that she was a female warrior. But that in and of itself doesn't confirm that women even fought in those days, or what their job on the lines, or they went a Viking. Because to be a Viking in Norse, in Norse times, is to go a Viking is to go on a trip. It's not to necessarily to protect your home. So I'm sure, like if you got your village and there would be some women that would stand up and swing a sword and fight to defend their village. But would you go abroad? And would it be exalted for women to go abroad and try and, plunder England and take stuff home from their churches and stuff like that? Like, maybe there is certainly a possibility without a doubt. But as you said, it is probably the exception, and there's archaeological debate about it. And I think, there could be something really, really interesting there that Yukimura could have, tweaked in the prologue, where, there is one woman part of Askeladd's band, and her perspective is that she's kind of struggling. I mean, this is somewhat Hild's character in a way, which is like,
really does,
where it's like you're struggling not to be the victim and wanting to take back your victimhood in a way. And Hild does that without having to be a warrior. Which, I mean, that's neither here or there. Like, Hild could have been a warrior. And, like say, for example, it maybe instead of Hild being a character, you could have had Anne become like that type of character, and then her kind of, being almost like a Mulan sort of arc, like in... you could have done stuff like that. I'm sure Yukimura could have, but that's not the story he wrote currently.
Yeah, it's just kind of not the focus. And I get the complaints with Hild too. Like, even though we say, well, Hild is a strong fighter, but like Yukimura makes the whole thing about how she has to use her mind instead of her body. She has to fight with her smarts.
Like
she has to create
she
the
can't pull back a
that she's
crossbow,
capable of loading, and it's just like I get it, and it's really strange because it's clearly meant to be this empowering thing of like, women are capable of incredible things. But if you look at it in that perspective of like, look what she has to do because of what she can't do, then you start to have a different, view on it, and it starts to feel a bit more, I don't know, patronizing. But I feel
Yeah.
like anybody who's read any of Yukimura's stories has to be aware of the respect he has for women, and
I'm sure. I think most people do.
Yeah.
It's just a small complaint.
Yeah.
I think, like, so for example, with the Hild example, what we're talking about is that the fact that she can't pull back the crossbow, and then her hunting master's like, yes, women can't. Of course, a woman can't pull back a crossbow. It's like, I could see a world, like, I mean, that crossbow, as far as I can tell, isn't even historically accurate. It's like about 200 years early for a crossbow, as far as I can tell. So that's a small thing. But, like, crossbows do have a massive draw
do.
weight, but you don't have to draw them back as far. And so if you're someone like Hild, who's already been training with a bow, sure, she's a teenage girl, she's like 15 years old, but she can, maybe the bow's like kind of weak that she's using. You can logic it out. And the whole point is, like, there's a world built for men. Literally, like, that crossbow is built for man,
Yeah.
and she's figured out a way to get around it by using the tools she has. That's the point.
yeah,
But you could have made it that, like, oh, she's so smart that she pulled back the crossbow and be like, damn, this is kind of inefficient. I'm going to make it more efficient.
yeah.
And you could have done that,
frame
but,
it
like,
in a better way. That's a good point.
you could frame it not even in a better way,
Well-
but that's just a different
well,
way.
yeah, yeah,
And you
sorry, I
lose that
didn't-
kind of, like, thematic. Yeah, you lose that thematic point of, like, Hild's trying to adapt to a world of men. And that's, like, kind of almost the undercurrent there, while this time is, like, you could maybe, like, the other way you could interpret that as, like, Hild's improving on the world of men or something like that. Like, so there's, like, a subtle thematic difference there on top of it. So it's not just, my point is that you could have changed that, and I'm sure that would have been absolutely fine, and maybe people would have enjoyed that more and would have made the manga better. But it also has thematic ramifications, and if those are good changes or bad changes, that I think they're small enough. But I think that it's interesting to talk about. I'm talking about it because I think I love the series and I love Yukimura as an author, but I'm also always up for a conversation that will critique him, and
Yeah.
that makes stuff even more interesting to me. Regardless. So
Yeah, like I do think it's good to point out that, like, like Gudrid becoming a traditional housewife-ish character is something that, like, we've complained about too. Like, that's not just something that we, like, disagree with and we want to, like, counter. That is kind of the reality of how women have been written in Vinland Saga. But I think it's good to ask why. When
Yeah,
we're critiquing it,
but
and
yeah. I think what I've heard is that, and I haven't read the history as much, but apparently Gudrid historically was a very, very feisty and upfront and leading woman. I don't know. That's what I've heard as a caricature. So it's like her character is so different from her history, and it's like not the way they would have wanted it. But the thing is, though, Gudrid still has the pep.
Yeah,
she still has the fire.
Yeah, I think of the way she, like,
she has
debated.
a baby. She debated. She has that very Gudrid way of debating. She literally punched Thorkel, and that feistiness to her hasn't, like, died down since, so I don't think her character's, like, to me, the fact that she become more mothering feels a very natural progression. It just feels like her character has, I mean, kind of literally in a way rounded out, but pregnancy joke. I don't. I understand frustrations because you may have wanted her character go different ways, but at the same time, I don't think where she's gone is necessarily bad. But as always, I always hope for more. I'm a greedy Vinland Saga fan. I always want more for my characters. I'm down to have a good arc, but maybe it's not in the cards.
What is in the cards,
Anyway.
though, is a fee arc.
Yeah, boy, we're back on track. We're 25 minutes in.
Yeah.
Classic.
So the whole point of that, a little tangent. Fee is a
Fee's
really
a great
well-written
female character.
Fee's
Yeah.
incredible. And I thought in the, like, first volume that, like, Fee was just kind of established as this, like, pretty much just comedic, like, less serious character, and throughout each volume since then, she's kind of had these little moments where I was like, oh, that was a really interesting thing about Fee. This is how she feels about this situation. This is how she reacts to this. And now this is just in full force. Fee's the main character of these chapters, and everything that comes out of this is genuinely incredible. Especially the latter half, which I really want to get to. But let's just start with Chapter 19, because Chapter 19 is focused on setting up sort of the first half of Fee's little arc here, and it's really focused on her relationship with her son, Albert. So she works in space, and then you have her husband, who is basically a stay-at-home house husband, taking care of their son, Albert. And Albert likes to bring home pets that he finds, any stray animal he finds out in the chaotic wilderness of Florida. He likes to just bring them home, and they've gotten up to, like, what was it, 8 dogs and 4 cats. So they got a whole zoo going on here. And it's funny because Fee kind of casually mentioned this in, I think, Volume 2. And now we have the full kind of brunt of it here.
Which is interesting because, like, I think that gives inclination that Yukimura did plan this at some point. This is probably his, in a way, like, longest non-main character kind of arc. So we've had our main character arc, and now we kind of get a bit of the fleshing out of the rest of the cast. And it's like, the whole kind of, like, point is, we kind of start with Tanabe, like, and not understanding, like, why Fee is being, like, so just, like, dismissive or, like, just lazy in a way, and not wanting to really cause much of a ruckus. And then she goes back home, and then Mrs. Grimmer? Yeah, Mrs. Grimmer. I like how she's Mrs.
Carmichael.
Carmichael. Is that like an actual last name?
Yeah, I've heard it before.
Carmichael? Okay, cool. That's nice. And then Miss Grimmer, so her neighbor's, like, basically, her neighbor has this, like, stark picture of a dog that's been muzzled. And, like the scene before, Fee is talking to Yuri about how, she feels like a pet or like a dog to the space agency and military and stuff, basically her superiors. And then she, like, sees a dog muzzled next to her, and there's, like, this contrast between her neighbor who's got full control of her dog, and then she enters the house and it's just absolute chaos with all these animals everywhere. And you really feel the absolute emotional stress of the situation. Oh my word. And her husband is definitely a very beta male TM, as, like, that fits the memes. He's just a very, like, sweet guy that doesn't like saying no. He's super lovely. He's a stay-at-home. He's like, I guess it's a bit stereotypical that, like, Fee's always been a little bit more on the aggressive side, and she's not just tropish. I love, like, even in the small moments, like, before we had, like, met Fee, like, she felt like still a pretty fleshed out character. Like, every bit of dialogue felt quite natural.
Yeah.
And her husband is just a very, very nice guy that doesn't really know how to say no, and kind of, it's just very sweet, while she is kind of always forced to be a bit more of the bad cop of the parenting situation, I guess.
I do think it was really interesting when Fee was talking to Yuri. She, like, straight up said that, like, we're, like, talking about the, like, space, like, their employers, whatever, saying, like, they're little pet dogs. We've forgotten that we were once wolves. I thought it was just so interesting that she is very, very aware of her position and how she has become so obedient. But she's just so kind of deep in that mindset of thinking, like, that's just how it is. That's just how it has to be when you get older. That even though she sees it, she just doesn't try to change it.
Yeah.
But, what really starts to push her to think about this is her son and the way the dogs are treated. So the dogs are essentially just a representation of this whole idea, because dogs, like, bark. It's just a natural, that's normal. If you've ever had a dog is going to bark. But people don't like when dogs bark. It's like this kind of unnecessary noise. It doesn't accomplish anything. It's seen as...
It's annoying.
Yeah, it's seen just as an inconvenience. And if a dog does not learn to stop barking, it doesn't, just like people don't grow up to learn how to not talk back, like someone like, Tanabe, who will still bark even if it's useless. We have if the
undisciplined.
Exactly,
That's what
undisciplined.
a barking dog is. Undisciplined.
And if the dog doesn't stop, it's going to get punished. It's going to, have pushback against this, and that's in the form of the muzzle. So she doesn't want to be muzzled. She doesn't want that. So she changes herself to appease what society wants of her, and do, not go against the grain, do what she's supposed to do, what she's expected to do. And the dog isn't wrong for barking. The dog doesn't understand and is barking just because, it's what it does. And but because it bothers people, it's that pressure of others that is forcing the dog to stop. So she just sees speaking up against things she disagrees with in a similar way. It's this unnecessary barking that's just an inconvenience, and ultimately you're going to be left worse off for it in the end when everybody turns against you.
Yeah, and I think there is something to that. It's just like, I mean, I'll get to my opinions, but when I first read this chapter, I was a little like confused because it felt a little bit like, this is completely the point, but it felt like a very childish theme, which is the whole point. But yeah, to kind of flip one more time back to like I talked a little bit earlier about how Fee in previous chapters felt like a natural character because of the dialogue. Like Yuri in a way also is like this, where he says, "You don't sound like your face. You don't sound like yourself. What's wrong?"
Yeah.
And then Fee just says, "Oh, nothing." And he's like, "That's a lie." And I'm just like, it's just like such a cute little like. This is just a natural bit of dialogue where he's like, "No, I'm calling you out. That's not how it is," And yeah, this is really like struck with her because in her heart she knows, as you pointed out, like she knows that she is being muzzled like a dog, and she's being forced to be compliant. But she's trying to explain to her son that, like, this is just how the world works, because ultimately, if you're disturbing other people, if you're being annoying, if you're being a ruckus, then people will turn against that. If it's not in terms of, like, hard action, like being evicted from your flat because your dog's barking, maybe it's in small ways, as we'll get to later on, where just people assume the worst of you, assume that you're weird or you're an outcast.
Yep.
And like it's a commentary of like what happens when you don't fit into society, and that you're having to comply with society.
Right.
And I mean, this is even more pertinent, I think, from a Japanese author. I know he's writing for characters that are in North America, and he uses the context of America to portray certain things. But like in Japan, I mean, I haven't lived there and I haven't had any experience, but what I have heard is that it's a very rigid culture, that you have to adhere to certain, lots of almost bureaucratic, arbitrary guidelines to kind of not shake the boat. It's a very communal society where you always want to be massively respectful to everybody else and not cause anybody else harm or annoyance. And I mean, like, I'm just trying to think of like a Japanese, block of flats with all these dogs barking. Like, they probably wouldn't even allow you to have a dog in the first place, in Japan and in lots of these flats, like just because you don't want to upset your neighbors, you don't want to be too loud, too annoying. So right. I feel like this is something definitely coming from personal experience here of some sort, maybe.
I definitely think it's also it does fit. It doesn't feel like it doesn't fit with writing a character who lives in North America, who lives in the States. Yes. It definitely still fits, but I definitely see what you mean. It's very much you could definitely feel the Japanese cultural influence on the idea. I agree with that. There's one thing that you said though, just kind of with the Fee analogy with the dogs. And the muzzle specifically, you said that she feels muzzled, but I think it's kind of important to make the distinction that I think it's more the fear of being muzzled and wanting to avoid that punishment. And she's essentially become trained, so she doesn't need the muzzle anymore.
Yeah,
I think
okay,
that's
true.
The right way to kind of, right, but I think that's the way to look at it, where it's important to note that she can bark still, but she chooses not to, rather than she's being forced to not bark.
She's a trained dog.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good point. That's a very good point.
But so speaking of the dogs, we have Albert come in with another dog, and it's a French bulldog named Iggy, which I am 100% sure is a JoJo reference. There's no way it's not.
Oh, well, I would have not got that.
But that's all there is to that one. But he just keeps bringing in more pets because he doesn't see a reason not to, and he's supposed to be this sort of like, kind of ignorant kid, doesn't realize like what's happening because of having all these untrained dogs in the apartment. But he'll just keep bringing them home anyway because that's what feels right. These are pet animals that are out on the streets alone, and he wants to make sure that they're taken care of. And Fee and her. Do we ever get the husband's name? Because I don't think it's ever mentioned.
She just calls him Papa.
Yeah, it's just Papa or my husband throughout the whole thing. So okay, I couldn't find a name either, but
maybe he does.
Both of them kind of had this sentiment that they agree on, that like Albert's a sweet boy and he does these things because he's a sweet boy, but when he gets older he'll understand. But Albert does not sort of take to that same thing, because Fee basically tells him that like when you live in the city you have to train your pets. I know you think it's cruel, but it's the only way to make them behave. And it's basically her saying like, when you live in society with people, you have to, concede, you have to compromise, you have to kind of give in on some of the things that you believe is right for the greater good of not being outcasted. And wow, I really want to talk about the later chapters because it all is represented so well when we get some more of her backstory.
Comes together.
And that's the big stuff. So I mean, let's just keep going. He kind of argues back against her, saying like it doesn't make sense. And then we kind of hop back to what's going on the ship, and they've come across an orbital mine. So and this is really interesting because Tanabe, as expected from a character like her, immediately is speaking up like, why does this exist? Why is there, the whole point of our job is to clean up junk that's floating out in orbit. Why do we leave things like this in orbit when they basically are like junk that could hurt somebody, that could do just as much damage, if not more, as the debris they're picking up? And Yuri essentially tells her like, it's not our job, to ask questions about this. We're told to leave it. And Fee agrees with the sentiment. We're told to leave it. That's just how it is. And Yuri specifically says, like, one solitary person cannot fight an organization like the military. And it's very much they're too big to fail. What can we do about it? Let's just do our job.
Yeah. It's and I think as you get older, it's like just the grander scale of society just cannot be overcome.
Yep.
And it is impossible. Society is so big, and I mean, this gets into, I'm sure, more things later, and another series which Yukimura also writes, but there's, when things are how they are in a society, sometimes you just wish that you could start all over and find somewhere new, find somewhere not here, you may say, and it is just like wrestling with how things are, which I think you kind of knocked on the head of.
So yeah, as okay, man, this chapter's dense. There's a lot here. Yeah. So going back, that you can see with this arc, there is kind of this structure of we go back and forth between what's happening in the present and how something in the past affects this and plays into this. I guess the stuff with Albert is a bit more present. It's kind of set up that this was something that happened on her last, trip back home. And later there will be kind of a back and forth between even farther in the past. But right now, We're just bouncing back and forth between what's going on, well, what had happened with Albert, and what's going on now with the mines. So back with Albert in the apartment, her neighbors are complaining, so she decides to try a training collar. So when the dogs bark, it sprays them with this solution in their face that kind of irritates them and makes their eyes start to water and stuff like that. And I thought it was really interesting how when Albert gets hit by this, Fee suddenly is like, "Oh, are you okay?" Tries to clean him up, and she's very concerned. But when it hits the dog, she's like, "I know, but that's just how it has to be." You know, she understands what this is causing, but she has accepted it because we'll get evicted if we don't. And I think it's interesting. I mean, this is kind of going a bit far ahead, but it feels like the eviction problem never really gets solved. I would have been interested to see how does she avoid this, eviction? How does she avoid the problem in a way that doesn't involve compromising on the sort of well-being of the dogs? But this kind of doesn't happen. I mean, I guess in a way it's not the point. Like, the point is, like, yeah, you're probably going to get evicted. But I just thought it was interesting that it doesn't really seem to be handled by the end. But it also doesn't feel like it needs to.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't really considered that, but I feel like it's kind of like Fee's mindset, and this is similar. It's like she will just not care. You have to force her, make her put on the muzzle, and she will break out again, and she'll just keep on repeating, because that's kind of what happens in the end with how she deals with the bombs, and that's kind of her arc, where she's like, yeah, cool, make me stop. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do what I want, and you got to stop me, And yeah, I mean, this chapter specifically had me conflicting emotions, because as you go on, like her son Albert turns around and kicks her, and then it has this stark picture of, like, she's like, ungrateful brat, like, why do you kick me, like, that's unnecessary. And then he just stares at her with this, almost like young Thorfinn angry stare.
That page is so good.
And she kind of looks at it, and she's stunned. But I got a bit annoyed by Albert, just because, like, in a way, like, to me, and maybe it's just the environment I brought, it's like, yes, you have animals, and it's good to feel compassion for those animals, but they're, like, I guess for me, and just in general, I've never had a massive issue with trying to conform to society, and just allowing people to sleep. That's like, you're causing havoc for them, which is like, is it too much to ask that you don't bark at night? Like, if that makes sense. Like, is it really too much to ask? And I guess just like what it's trying to compare it to. Like, I think what Fee is up against later, it feels a lot more justified in what she's trying to do. But this, like, for Albert, I feel like it's like the way you go about training them, that's mean. But I've also trained a dog in a way where it's like the carrot and the stick approach. She's just using the stick approach, where you have to punish the dog, not reward the dog for correct behavior.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, be violent or hurt the dog to train it. You can just be like, hey, no, could you just not do that? I'm going to tell you off for barking, or give you a treat for not barking, like.
But one of them's easier and gets immediate results.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, but I get the point of what it's trying to do, and I think the key thing is that Fee resonates with this mindset, because that's exactly how she is. And she's more just like thinking, where did I lose that along the way? When did I stop? I mean, this is what the next thing goes on. She's 34. I think Albert's 9. So she's been out in space for about 13 years. That's what I pieced together. She's been doing space pickup since she's 21.
Yeah.
And she kind of says she first saw the US bomb when in her second year, and then in my third year I met my husband. Fourth year I married him. Fifth year Albert was born. So actually she started when she was 20.
Yeah.
But what year did I decide? Did I understand that whenever I see one, I have to ignore it?
I love that distinction between decide and understand. Like, no, this was not my choice. I learned it, I was taught it, like that. This is, I was trained, you know. It's so, I really like this part. I really like how she tries to think back to when her perspective changed, and in a way, I think with what happens later, I almost think we kind of learned that she learned this a long time ago. Like, it's kind of insinuated that when she first saw it, she was kind of like Tanabe. She was like, why is this here? Why does this exist? It doesn't need to exist. But it almost, I think from the past events, it was almost ingrained into her at a very young age. That like, you know, what happens when you're not complacent. But yeah, she goes and she jumps up and she just like kicks the mine, and it does absolutely nothing, you know. But it's not about immediately making a dent. It's about genuinely and like sincerely fighting back against something you disagree with, even if it's something too large for your influence to damage alone.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, and the kick is in exactly the same pose as Albert as well, which is, you know, another nice thing that I didn't quite catch my first time, even though it was quite obvious. But it is like...
And like Albert too, she looks up with this angry expression at it. Like it has... Like, it's above her, but she doesn't care. Like she will look up at it with that expression either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the final page of this chapter is really nice, and it's like, never stop searching for what's right. Someday you'll find something very precious.
Yeah,
and it's like
when I read this,
it's him demuzzling the other dog. That's what Albert's doing, which I think is interesting.
That's great. I when I first read this, I thought that was just gonna be. I thought this was like a feet one-off chapter, and that'd be like the end of it.
Yeah,
but it just keeps going. It just keeps going, and it keeps getting better.
All right, so in chapter 20, we start off with, which is always wonderful. I love these colored pages from Yukimura and you just see this US vessel just getting smashed to pieces, and you kind of get introduced early on to like Fee kind of barging in on a bunch of guys and changing the channel, making them, you know, not able to watch their horse racing, to find out that, you know, and this is kind of the major plot thread to this whole arc, which is, I guess, a bit unusual for Planet S, where they like to kind of you know, not necessarily have the biggest overarching plot, and it's about basically like one of the mines, you know, intercepted. I maybe falsely targeted, or they just knocked into each other, and just destroyed a military vessel, transport vessel, and then lots of the U.S. military crew members on board were dead. I think it was like on pretty much 10. Well, 9 were missing and 1 has been found, and like this makes Fee really mad. Mainly because this is just more stuff for her to clean up.
Yeah.
And she's like, what? Why? What? She's always been annoyed at these bombs, and now she has to clean up even more. Which I guess is just the main. I'm not sure if I missed any of the plot details, but this is Fee like once again just showing her genuine frustration and anger, which is like a core part of her character. She's less pacified already than she was in a previous chapter, I guess. And then we are introduced to what's called the Kessler syndrome, which I've heard of before, which is basically...
It also got mentioned in a couple... I think in a couple chapters it's been mentioned
Maybe
already.
It did, yeah. And it's this idea, and it's very... I'm not surprised if it was mentioned before, because it's very pertinent to, you know, space cleaning up, garbage collection, which is basically kind of... this chain reaction of sorts, is that when you explode some small debris, like it may be quite small debris up in space, but it's orbiting the Earth so fast that it will collide with something else, and that will make even smaller debris. And then there'll just be loads of bits of small debris everywhere, and it's like as you send more space stuff up there, like ships, bits will get chipped off and stuff like that, and again and again just get smashed to pieces, and eventually you'll never be able to leave the solar system. Debris will compound at a geometric rate until the entire orbit is impassable. That is the Kessler syndrome, and we are introduced to an interesting looking military commander with white hair, white mustache, and a little goatee on his chin. And you know, instantly you look at him and you're like, there's no way this kind of looks like some famous fast food icon I know of. And then like it keeps on going, and then it's like basically he is like very stressed about this situation, this Keisler syndrome. He seems to care a lot about it and understands it very well. And then it's interesting, like, you know, his wife kind of talks about it's like, this job is no good for you, and then he's like, this job, don't be silly, you know, the Space Force needs men like me. Oh, yeah. So he's part of the Space Force and not the U.S. military.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, I got a little bit confused by, so there's two main groups. There's the Space Force Republic and the United States military, I think, as far as I know.
No, I think it's like the Space Force that he's part of it's like the space military. It's another branch, kind of like how the Navy is another branch of the U.S. military. Yes. And then the Republic is just the generic way they refer to whatever the opposing nation is, which they are very vague about.
Oh, is this like the... Yes, you have the... Yeah, so it's just like whatever nation. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I'm not sure if you've much to commentate on the commentary here, but he basically... Colonel Sanders goes and gives a report to his superior, and the superior kind of says, you know, Congress has declared war on space, you know, and I love this imagery so much. Like he goes into a speech, you know, and the transport ship was attacked by mind control by a foreign nation. You know, there's provocation, there's men that are dead, and debris. We need to fight now so we can avoid more damage in the future. And it's like he's darkened out, and you can see the US flag behind him in the background. It's like it's like not subtle imagery at all, but yeah,
exactly. Like, I thought,
but you have to think about, like, when he's writing this is just after the invasion in the Iraq War.
Good point.
Or something.
Very good.
So this is like very pertinent to Yukimura, and I do wonder, like, particularly this, like, how much he knows about America in general and this culture, and I don't know how much gets over to America and this culture, because he seems to have quite a fine hand and understanding of America and how he touches, particularly on things later on, as we're kind of alluding to. But this is one of these things where, you know, Colonel Sanders kind of undermines this great speech of his superior by basically saying he wants to be a hero in space.
Yeah. So I have a couple things I want to talk about here.
Yeah, for sure.
Before we get back to this conversation, I want to go back a second to the start of the chapter.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting how, of course, with this whole, like, you know, first chapter was all focused on, you know, dogs being trained to, and, like, restricted from, like, you know, kind of their nature, I guess. And then we open on the thing they're watching is horse racing, where you have the horses, like, you know, they put the blinders on them to make them, like, focus and stuff like that, and they're forced to race like this. I just thought it was interesting that, like, you know, they don't open with, like, you know, baseball. Baseball's been a big, like, focus for some reason. You could have opened with baseball, but he specifically decides to have them watch horse racing, and I think that's intentional to play off this, you know, this thing about training animals and people being trained and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, why? Yeah, it's like, what sport do you want to show? Oh, it shows horse racing. Like, that makes sense. You know, like, yeah, that's a really good, like why would he show horse racing of all things? That makes sense, because we have had baseball on TV before, right?
Mm-hmm. And specifically baseball betting too, like betting on the game and stuff like that. And yet, and they're betting here too, so it's kind of the same thing. But he specifically chooses the horse racing, which is interesting to me. But also with the whole sovereign nation thing, how this opposing nation in this war is, I guess it's technically not a war yet, but this opposing nation is referred to in the vaguest possible terms. And essentially, I think Yukimura doesn't want to, label any other nation as an aggressor. He doesn't want to, you know, call out some other random nation as an enemy. And he also probably doesn't want to predict the future conflict. So the vaguer, the better. But it does get a little jarring, I think, that throughout the whole thing, it almost takes away from the dialogue and makes it feel very not real. I don't know. Maybe in Japanese there might be some word or phrase they're using that's a bit more common and a bit it fits a bit better into the sentence and the phrasing, but it definitely feels a bit forced here. But I get why, and it's not a big complaint. I just thought it was interesting. But honestly, what is really interesting to me, though, is this conversation between the commander and Colonel Sanders. Because when I first read, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, I guess, as we go forward and more of Sanders' involvement in this. But I kind of read this at first as the two of them, well, as Sanders being entirely genuine in his goals and then kind of calling out the commander that, like, he's being disingenuous. It isn't really about, fighting and doing the right thing. It's about how he can benefit from this war. But on the second read, I was starting to think, like, the way that he says to Sanders, like, oh, with writing like this, you could be a novelist. It does kind of, I guess, reflect what Sanders says to him later about, with a speech like this, you could be president. It almost, on the second read, I was thinking, like, does Sanders have an ulterior motive here? Is he trying to use this for something else? And I'm really curious if you got that feeling, too, of him having some other reason for wanting to do this.
There's a little bit of whiplash here because it's kind of like... So we find out later that basically Fee just doesn't like Colonel Sanders, so she just cuts ties with him, which retroactively kind of places you like, you feel like on the first read he's a good guy who cares a lot about this Kessler thing and wants to keep it. But the thing is, I think what is shown more is that as a novelist, and this kind of ties in more later, which you just kind of helped me click together, is that he's a bit of a fiction writer.
Yep, he has a story.
And as we'll see later on, he starts fabricating interviews with Tanabe and other, with Yuri as well. So he's underhanded tactics to get to his goal as well. I think it's interesting is like, he says, oh, you could be a professional writer. And then Colonel Sanders replies like, but few of us are lucky enough to get a job we must desire, Commander.
Yeah, exactly.
And the commander's like grumpy enough about it. Because that kind of also reflects on the commander here, where he's like, oh, I really want to become, even greater, like get a higher job. It's like almost, but it's also like a subtle jab that like, there's like a weird like undercurrent. There's a nice subtext to this thing, which I think makes all dialogue more fun to read and engage with. Like it pokes and prods and just undermining, and like Colonel Sanders is putting up a front in this thing, because afterwards, like, he has a big sigh of relief, and he's not a man of strong constitution in general, and we'll find out later in the next video, I think, as well. I haven't reread those chapters yet, but he does. He is once again being a novelist writer, so I feel like he's being genuine here. But there's something about like Fee when she doesn't accept his goals, she realizes she is still just a pawn to Colonel Sanders,
really it.
And it's the lack of genuineness that irks her, and it's like all like it's him playing. She doesn't want to be a pawn in their games, basically, and she just says no to it all.
That's exactly it. I think on first read, we'll talk about her conversation with Sanders a bit more when we actually get to it, but on first read, I was trying to figure out what is his ulterior motive that Fee has kind of figured out and I'm not figuring out. But it really is that there isn't an ulterior motive. It's just to work with him and have the backing of a whole sect of the military just goes against the whole point of what she's doing. The reason, like, she is rebelling because she disagrees, and it's not really rebellion if you have the backing of the whole military. And we'll probably get a bit more into that when we get there. But yeah, I think this would essentially be going through it right now would be my third run through of this part of the volume. I do think that Sanders, yes, he is a novelist. He does have this kind of fictionalization of reality and kind of playing games with it. But I don't think he's trying to do this for the fame. It's more like I don't think he wants to like specifically become a successful novelist by writing about this. It's hard. It's hard. that's why he's so interesting to me, because I can't
I
really
think
pinpoint what
he's
his
a
motives
Canute
are.
type character where he has noble goals, but he'll do anything to get there. And he's just shown to be like a bit more complex. And he's got this a bit of a gag where he's like, "Oh, I'm Colonel Sanders," you know. I'm not sure, like as a funny reference, you know. So, um, but yeah, I don't think it's like we're not trying to get that deep. It's just like he's it's just like a complex character where like he's not entirely good. He'll use some stuff against him, you know. He's but against the will, which is kind of scummy. But he is trying to stop this whole Kessler syndrome, which is, you know, very important to help with. And I think he ultimately fails in the end or something. Or I'm not sure quite how the politics works out in the end completely, but we'll get onto that
Yeah.
later.
But yeah, so we kind of get back to Fee now, and they're out on the DS-12 to start cleaning up debris. So essentially, this whole war is about to start. Essentially, it hasn't. I don't think it's actually like started yet, but they're essentially going out to clean up already, and they enter this restricted area, and you have like Control telling her like, you're in a restricted area, you need to leave, all this, and then she continues to go out there anyways, and she thinks back to when she was like, I don't want to say causing a scene, but like when she like changed the channel to show like the war and like what had happened with the mine, and she's the only one who's like, we gotta go do something, and everyone else is essentially saying like this is just a force that's too big for us to deal with. The debris they create in 10 seconds is more than we can clean in 10 years. So what can we really do? And she's now kind of like taking up that same position as Albert, where like she sees, she gets it, she can see why they're saying this. And that's really the distinction, isn't it? That between her and Albert. And this is really focused on near the end of this section of the volume, the end of this arc. But whereas Albert is a kid who just doesn't understand, she's an adult who understands, and she has to kind of share that space with her understanding of how the world works and her desire to rebel against it when she doesn't agree.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically tell her only a kid would fight a fight he can't win. And this makes her think about Albert, kicking her, which, didn't really do anything. It's not going to make her change the way she... Well, in a way it kind of does, doesn't it? It does affect her. So the kick isn't... Like, I guess the kick out of surface perspective is powerless, but it does get Fee to think. So it is kind of to show, this person bigger than me, I'm able to change their mind, even though like the physical force of it wasn't really anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that's interesting. But go for it.
I guess is Fee trying to reconcile how she lost this part of her?
Yeah, I think so.
And I think that's like particularly with her background, as we'll kind of delve into more, and her history, how the contrast between, I guess, her uncle and her mother. It's just there's like this underlying frustration that she has, where she knows in some ways she doesn't get along with society. She has to bury it down, this thing that she feels is wrong, she knows is wrong, but she doesn't do anything about it because and turns a blind eye towards it, and that annoys her. But it's basically her son and Tanabe who kind of cool her out of that passive mindset, which I think is fair. And so that's like her trying to almost find herself again.
Yeah.
Which is, interesting.
But, so she's kind of resolved, even though what she's doing won't have a huge impact just by, like, doing their job out there in this restricted zone. She knows it's more important, and she's going to do it anyways. And Sanders hears about what Fee is doing, and he thinks he can use her. And we kind of see already, like, the way this page transitions between him saying, oh, perhaps we can use her, and then going to the protesters at the mine. It definitely already gets in your head like that he is behind this, which is talked about a bit more later when we get like the whole fake interview stuff, which is crazy. But yeah, we have this group doing a peaceful anti-war protest in front of the orbital mine, and it's like being televised and all that. And Yuri immediately comments on how, with all the proximity regulations, there's no way civilian protesters could even get out here without internal help. Like, he basically sees right through it and knows, like, there is a sect, at least in the military, that is backing this.
Yeah, and I mean that as well. And but I just thought maybe another way of thinking about it is that this could also be fake. As we find out later,
That's a great point.
This could also be like a deep fake of some sorts. And it's interesting how despite being written in 2000, it's like this. It would definitely be a thing in 2080. 2080, having some sort of deep fake for your political agenda.
Yeah, it's so interesting that the deep fake stuff is being written at that, like, 2005. Like, this is something somebody would definitely write about right now.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we'll be probably well beyond it in 2080, but it is an interesting thing to think about. Like, by 2030, how many like news stories could be fakes by AI generated things, which is crazy. It's very possible.
Yeah, it is kind of scary to, like, I don't know. Like, people are always afraid of new technologies like that, and I guess I've almost become a bit numb to it, but it really is, like, kind of scary. Like, anybody could literally make anyone say anything, and we're really not far from this at all.
And currently, like the best way to see if something's deep faked is run it through an algorithm, and the algorithm will tell you if it's deep faked or not. Like, that's kind of like, it's that like almost deep fake war, when most technological processes made during wartime, as people try and outcompete each other on the battlefield and stuff like that. It's like technological advancement, and like that's the thing. It's like, because deepfakes, you can't tell them if they're real or not. Eventually, you'll need algorithms to detect, and then the algorithms will try and hide themselves from those deepfake finding algorithms, and then the deepfake finding algorithms will have to try and find a new way to find the algorithms, and it goes back and forth between defense and attack. But yeah. And I think, anyway, this is sci-fi, but it's a very grounded sci-fi. So it's like just subtle differences like that.
Yeah.
Because one thing, like these clothes do feel very like 90s and early 2000s in a way. Like, and maybe, so I don't think the fashion will be the same. But who knows? It may come back in full force. Like,
yeah, I do think fashion's probably one of the harder things to predict when it comes to the future compared to the advancement of technology. But that's a good point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have this kind of quote here from Fee before the call with Sanders. She says, "Both sides may be right and both sides may be wrong. This is how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing changes, but they'll still go to war. As we become adults, we get lazier. We wish to grow up. We wish to be respected, but somewhere along the way, we lose sight of who we are. Did I lose it? What I used to be, is that it, Albert?" And I just really love that part. And it's so Yukimura, right? It's like, so like the uselessness of war, both sides may be right. As we become adults, we get lazier. The whole, like, taking the more difficult route because it's the right thing to do, compared to the laziness, the taking the easy way. It's just so Yukimura. I love how much of the end of this story really leads into what he will write next. And this is like one of those points where it's just so blatant to see where his mind is at as he finishes the story.
Yeah. I think it's also like super Yukimura because it's like, it's almost humble, and it makes like the depth. It's like he's just pointing out like an interesting thing that happens.
Yeah.
He's not saying like. He's not necessarily like taking a side. He's just like, this is just an interesting thought that we do this. We accept this. I'm not sure on the solution, but it's a weird problem. And like, I like how he says we become lazier, because there is that sense to like, most people are politically like really strong or really active, like more willing to be more radical when they're younger. It's like, and as they get older, they become more weathered down and less ideological. And it's almost like, it's an interesting critique of that. And it makes, it's so interesting. It'll be interesting to see where Yukimura goes with the end of Vinland Saga, because that ties into like almost Thorfinn's blunt, never relenting commitment to his ideology.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So good. But yeah, we have the call. Sanders calls Fee, and he basically is asking to use her rebellion as a way of, to televise it so they can have more people agree with the sentiment of being anti-war. So then her rebellion can inspire others, and they can hopefully avoid war and avoid Kessler syndrome. So, like I said before, when I first read this, I saw how Fee was reacting to him, and I was thinking, like, okay, what is his ulterior motive? Because I don't see it. I think this guy is genuinely trying to prevent Kessler syndrome, and it seems like he, is trying to do the right thing, and, working with him would probably bring a good result. Like, I'm trying to see what is this guy trying to do that I'm not seeing. But it really isn't about that. It is just about, I'm rebelling here. Why would I want to have the military back me? Like, he tells Fee, she could bring her ship to one of their military spaceports, so then she can restock on supplies and stuff like that without having to worry about being apprehended by authorities. So it's at what point is it even rebelling anymore if you're being permitted to do it? And even because I genuinely think, yeah, maybe if she did work with him, it would make a difference in the effect she's having on this. But she almost she cares more about her own personal rebellion here, and I think she almost knows the futility of it. She knows it's not going to change things, but she's doing it anyway. But I mean, what do you think about Fee's decision to not work with him? And is she not accomplishing it? Or rather, is she doing the wrong thing, and she could have maybe changed something by working with him?
I think for her, it's almost inauthentic. I think that's the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Why does she care about the Kessler syndrome? Well, she's never actually really mentioned it, that she doesn't care about it. This is a presumption from Colonel Sanders. But she just doesn't want to, have to deal with more rubbish. That's what annoys her. And if she has to partake with this guy, she feels like she's then also losing a bit of herself, in the sense that she's going to have to compromise on what she wants to do. And she doesn't want to be famous. She doesn't want to be well known. She doesn't want to be, a hero or anything. She just wants to clean up stuff and not have to, not feel like I'm not doing anything with my life, in a way. I think that's part of it. And it's this kind of reinforcing of, it may not be the completely rational decision. It may be a very irrational decision, but she's wanting to be childish. It's like she feels like she's been just coerced to be part of the same structure, or like a similar structure. So it's, I don't know. It's just it's fake, and she susses it out, and she doesn't like that. And I think that's the greatest crime against Colonel Sanders, is that he is willing to be fake, willing to be fictional,
Right.
Which I think she doesn't like.
It's just so interesting to think about, what could have happened if she did help. I mean, I guess it didn't really make a difference, right? Because he fabricates it anyway. So what we see the result anyway. Maybe she saw that. But after she hangs up, Tanabe comments like, people like him. Where is it? It's something like people like him are what causes war. Oh yeah, wars start because of men like him. I'm trying to think like, what is? I mean, I guess like the willingness to fabricate information, like what Yuri says before, like the first victim in war is the truth. Oh no, he says it later when they have their deep fake interviews come up, and I guess like allowing him to create this fake narrative is, sure he's doing it to try to avoid war now, but having this narrative, well, being willing to do something like this is also something that can very easily justify war. And you make a very good point about how like the war in Iraq is such a recent thing at this time. How, there is a lot of fabrication to justify having that war. There is a lot of that. And you're right. It does play into this a lot because, yes, he's trying to be anti-war now, but this is a tactic that's very much used to cause war. And I think that's the way they're looking at it. But it's just very interesting to me to see, like, he doesn't really have an ulterior motive where he's trying to benefit from it. It really is just the method, the way he goes about it.
It's
so interesting.
And almost, I think, like, Yukimura develops this idea more with, like, the most dangerous man. It's just, like, you're able to compromise anything for your goal. And that makes you radically dangerous. The people who hate war the most are the most dangerous that Thorfinn is scared of. And I think that's probably, like, partially what it is, because, like, he's willing to bend the truth. He's willing to, like... And he also has the glasses. Like, this is, like, another key component of, like, character design in a lot of anime. It's, like, people who have glasses, when you can't see their eyes, they can't be trusted.
Yeah.
Which kind of leans back to the conversation he was having with, like, the guy, like... like lots of the images there, you can't see through his glasses. So, anyway, I just want to comment on how cool this like moment where she like pulls out the cigarette, and he's like, so smoking permitted aboard your airship, and she's like, of course not. We both understand this is, both things quite clearly, and it's like, I think this is why I feel like it works so well with her character. Like, you open up the double page spread with her and her son, cross-legged on that colored thing where she has her biker jacket on.
Yeah.
And that's like, her having a biker jacket, liking to ride a motorcycle, smoking cigarettes constantly, is an icon of rebellion, of trying to stick out, trying to be different. Not even trying to, but being different, you know.
Being willing to be different.
Yeah, being a rebel, and that's kind of how Fees is and who she is, and this whole smoking kind of buys into this a lot. And yeah, I think it is interesting how you talk about like, yeah, I mean, and we talked about earlier about how just like men cause wars. Thing that Yukimura has along, and I do think it's funny like how they do funny, like, say, go sell some fried chicken at a gas station.
That's such a good page.
Or I hate that geezer too. Mr. Chicken Man doesn't know who he's messing with. Fee, like I like how they play into that. It's a funny gag I enjoy, but
I do think it's interesting. The little comment he makes, like asking if smoking is permitted aboard her ship. That's like that's exactly where the difference between these two characters and the disagreement lies. Because Fee does not want permission to do what she's doing. That's what undermines the entire purpose of what she's doing. And like he's clearly like, playing within the bounds of society, within the rules or whatever. He is about like, why are you smoking without permission? Do you have permission on your ship or whatever? He's very much like this rule oriented, kind of giving in to society. I guess he's like a well trained, or I guess he's the trainer in this sense. But
he's also well trained. Like he's scared. Like he will act out, but he won't do it up in your face. He'll go behind back.
Oh, that's a good
behind
point.
Your back.
Yeah.
So he's more like
underhanded nature. That's a very good point.
Yeah, and Sophie's just more authentic with it, where she's just like, hey, no, I'm going to rebel, and you're going to know I'm not going to pretend I'm not rebelling here. This is how I roll. And I think it's more of just like her being in the situation where she's just like, oh, screw it all. Screw the whole system. I just don't care. Like, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this is almost, so it's not like that she's making the right decision. She's just making one that like, fits with what she wants to do at the moment, which is childish, but like, it's frustrating when the society just tries to control and like stamp down on like what you need to do. Yeah, it's interesting though. It's like, yeah, like the whole war thing, and trying to like almost reconcile it. I don't know exactly, but yeah.
I think this conversation has definitely helped me piece this together, and this is why Sanders was so interesting to me, and this whole chapter was so interesting to me, because this definitely felt like I wasn't getting it on the first read, and even on the second read, I was going into it with a different perspective. I was like, okay, I think it seems like she disagrees with some ulterior motive, and I didn't figure it out. Maybe on this read, I could start piecing together, and that's when I caught the novelist line. I was like, oh, okay, maybe he wants to, like, you know, benefit and, like, you know, get a career as a novelist or whatever by creating this story here. But I think we're hitting the nail on the head now. This is about him being willing and very easily fabricating reality, and you know, having, but only doing this with like such large backing behind him. He's not rebelling. He has he has all of these resources to work with to accomplish what he wants to do, and he gets an awful taste in her mouth at the idea of working with this guy, because it's not the rebellion that she is trying to do. It's disingenuous.
Yeah, and I think this is the cool thing. So at the end here it says, once you get old, it's hard to get it back. That urge to fight against things that don't make sense. Hey, Albert, you don't have to kick me anymore. I feel better. And it's like, Fee at her heart is a rebel. That's who she is. That's who she authentically is. And she doesn't want to be castrated to anything else. And she thinks none of this makes sense. Why have bombs in space? It makes no sense. But then she just learned to accept it, and now she thinks it makes no sense, and so she is going to try and go her own way to get the bombs out of space instead of some backhanded tactic to diffuse war. I guess it's also like Colonel Sanders isn't trying to take the bombs out of space, and she thinks, no, I'm going to try and get rid of them. I think that's what she eventually tries to do. Something along those lines. But yeah, no, I agree with your point. These conversations always help to understand more about these things.
And I just think, that this is just such a good exploration of her character, because from the beginning, you have this kind of, like you said, like this character design and manner of like, the smoking and stuff like that, very much the rebel. And yet, when I think about it, she has always been the, like, following protocol, like, keeping Hachi in line kind of thing. Yuri will in some cases do his own thing too, against like, what common protocol would be. But and he's also not as like spoken up about like, keeping others in control and stuff like that. But he's not exactly a rebel, But Hachi is kind of all over the place, and Fee's usually the one keeping them in control, like talking about like what the proper method is to be. And it's interesting to me that kind of I guess conflicting character traits, I guess those conflicting character traits are set up from the beginning, so you can see like even though she is this rebellious kind of looking character, she really is like following protocol and doing what their job is essentially. And it's just so cool that even if this wasn't like planned from the beginning, either way, it just shows Yukimura's ability to have this very like simple character setup, and then just keep giving it more and more depth to the point where like now she is probably one of like the deeper characters in the cast at this point.
For sure.
But yeah, let's go on to chapter 21, because this is the stuff. Yeah, this is the stuff we get Uncle Woodhouse. And oh my god, what?
So he's actually so he you know what so he has his wood house. I got really confused by this. So I thought he was called Uncle Wood at first, but no, the wood it's just
Yeah.
Uncle's wood house. He's called Roy.
Yeah, his name
That's
is
his
Roy.
name.
Yeah.
Roy Barrett or something like that. Hang on. Let me go back. Oh, he's just called Fee's uncle on Mao. That's incorrect.
Oh wow, they don't have.
Does this mean he's not in the anime because he doesn't have a picture?
Oh no.
There's no way, bro. Okay, this is
if
gonna
they
be,
cut,
this is gonna be
hold
some
on.
tea.
I might be complaining a lot if they cut my man Roy because this guy is amazing. I adore this character.
Yeah, no, I think just, the fact that, in general, I think, I'm looking forward to watching the anime because it sounds so different that it will be really interesting to actually see, the changes. So in this world with these characters, it almost feels like to compare the difference and experiencing just more the different stories in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, let's get on to Uncle Roy, Fee's uncle. Maybe we should kind of more summarize here so we don't go too long.
Yeah.
But the key thing is that he's a man in the wilderness. He likes to, Oh, I called him Uncle Woodhouse. That's it. So she called him Uncle Woodhouse, and he's called because he basically has a big old tree house in the wilderness, and it's this kind of idea that he doesn't fit in society, and instead of being able to conform to society like the dogs or like Fee, he just left society.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have a job. He doesn't have money. He just stays in the wilderness and catches fish and eats off that, plays his violin, lives a very simple life. But there's like this contrast because he's such a gentle, kind-hearted guy, so much fun, but there's clearly a lot of hurt with him. And you're not sure why at the beginning, but Fee's mother's always like, don't just stay with, hang on, is this chapter? Oh no! Sorry, I almost. Sorry, I thought this chapter was like 2 pages long for a second, but Fee's mother's like the opposite. She's the one that's been able to conform to society and live within it. And there's like this dichotomy between these two siblings, and I love the opening phase picture of Fee putting on the jacket. Saying "Go back to the teenager." Yellow corn.
Yeah,
it's such a like. This is the whole motto of this arc of like go back to being a rebel, to like being more authentic to yourself, and not necessarily trying to conform to society.
Yeah.
And once again, like Yukimura does this really nice dynamic thing of switching back in between, living, what Fee is currently doing, on the spaceship, and then her past, and whether it be her son or her deep past when she's a child with Uncle Roy, Uncle Woodhouse. So, yeah, do you have anything else to say, or should we keep on plowing forward? Or
well, I guess I don't have much more to say about like this introduction of Roy. We kind of don't have a lot. Like we get kind of a very brief understanding of him. Outcasted, his mom. Oh, sorry. Fee's mom doesn't want her to spend time with him and be like him because she's concerned about, how he looks to society. And, but, before we get more of that, we kind of go back to Fee in the present. And there's one thing here that was really interesting to me. So, like, the war stuff is continuing, but Fee is kind of, like, feeling, like, sick, under the weather kind of thing. Feeling tired, and Yuri like encourages her to go get some rest and stuff. But I thought it was really interesting how she just kind of casually mentions being on her period. I feel like I can't think of a single time, and I mean I haven't read that much manga, but in all manga and anime, I've gone through, I've never heard a character just casually mention it without it being like either a part of a joke or be an explanation for unrealistic behavior. This is just a very casual mention of it, and Yukimura's my goat. What can I say?
Yeah, exactly. Yukimura. What were you saying? You can't write female characters, and like, yeah, it's just like she's not like it's not like a way to be like derogatory towards women. It's like, oh, you're angry, oh, you must be on your period, kind of deal, whatever, something like annoying like that. It's like
Just very
she's
normal.
in a few way very blunt. She's just like, I feel a bit like I'm tired. I'm not sure. It's just my period. Oh, that's so cool. I kind of missed over that. But then, we get to see a cool of these space showers, which is just like lawn sprinklers, I guess, on walls, which is kind of crazy. And I mean, I guess I always take note of when Yukimura is showing some sort of nudity, because I'm like, he uses it very sparingly. So, but yeah, I think it's like a cool like. I do wonder if the anime is going to have more fan service in it, and if I hate it or not. This is something I'm very.
I will say, episode
interested.
1 does have a bit more of that kind of anime-ish kind of. You'll see it. I mean, it's not
We'll
like
see.
you know, it's not like I guess a sexualization of the characters as much as like, you'll see. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. Okay.
At least watch episode
Interesting.
1, and you'll get. I think if you
Yeah.
watch episode 1, you'll get a good sense of where I'm coming from, anyways.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah. So she's like resting now. She's thinking to herself like, she's been doing this for so long, and all this time of like picking up debris and trying to clear it out. There's always just more of it, and it's just like the futility of her actions getting to her. She's thinking about this, and as we get that, we see an announcement from like the president, and he's
The White
basically.
House.
Oh yeah, right, from the White House, and he's basically calling for a disarmament of this republic country that they're against. Again, being very vague, but basically he says something where if their demands aren't met, he will have no choice but to take military action. And
Yeah.
Anyone who's read Vinland Saga knows Yukimura. The whole point is that you do have a choice.
Yeah.
There's never a point where the only choice is war, is violence.
Yeah.
So I mean that
And-
stuck out to me.
Yeah, and I think it's very clear. It's like the eyes of the president is never shown. He's never humanized.
it's so
it's
good.
a trope of like he's lying here in a way. So like when I read this for the second time, it was like I've called for like I've requested immediate disarmament of the republic currently holding the weapons for space warfare, which I think could be like a reference to the nuclearization of Iran and stuff like that. And then I've also called for the resignation of its current administrative cabinet and the rest of the president who will be tried as a war criminal in international court. And it's in a way it's like it's like it is like a very much like is incredibly demanding. It's
Yeah.
like, what right do you think you have to be like your president? Like, imagine if another country from your president says, we will go to war with you unless you sack your own president, kind of thing. It's like crazy high in terms of like, we have no choice to take military action, but it's incredibly hawkish. And I like how they use that term.
Yeah.
Because that's like it's a very good point. Like later on, I think earlier on, like as Colonel Sanders Mendes, like, the more hawkish people of my cohort colleagues will go for it.
He
But,
says this in during the call with Fee when he's explaining
that was it, yeah.
why he needs her help.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is really interesting to me. That's such a good point. I can't believe as I read this that I didn't think about the war on terror and how that would be such a present thing at the time of writing this. But everything makes a lot more sense of why this is here and why this is on mind when you think about that. That's so good.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see. Yeah, so now we got the deep fake interviews. And yeah, like I said before, it's so crazy to see this because it's almost like depicted as like this far future thing, but we're kind of like, we're right there at this point. Like we're not too far off from this. Obviously the extent they're able to go is probably a bit further. Well, I'm sure a lot further because you can still, in modern times right now, you can still kind of point out the flaws and the unrealistic aspects of it. But we're getting close to a point where it really is going to get impossible to discern.
Give it 1, 2, 3, 5 years. Like it'll be. it'll be here very soon.
Yeah. But
Who knows? You may see in a Jarkey Bacon video where
Oh.
I have like, I was thinking like, what is ages ago, like to make like a V2 avatar of my little bacon guy.
Yeah.
I thought that would be hilarious. It's not like a deep fake, but something funny like that.
it's impossible to discern which one's the real Jarkey Bacon.
Yeah, you never know.
But yeah, so this is where Yuri says the line that I said before. They say the first victim of war is the truth, and I really love that line.
It's such a good line, yeah.
Because basically, like, Sanders has decided, okay, well, if you're not going to comply to my narrative, I'm just going to make the narrative myself. I don't need you. And just like fabricating this fake protest, he fabricates this interview with them, this interview segment showing like Fee as this, hero figure to have people, to influence the minds of people. Very Metal Gear Solid 2. Now that I'm thinking about it, this like idea of like AI generated ideas to change public perspective, to change the narrative, to influence the people. Very, very like it's very interesting. And she.
I mean,
go ahead.
What I like more later is like we then kind of, after deepfakes and after that quote of like, the first victim of war is the truth. I love like how realistic this conversation where like Fee's talking to her mother now, and she's like, "Of course, it's all made up. Like I didn't do anything like that. I just woke up like she's trying to explain to her mom like the technology and that is fake.
Yeah,
and it's like it's really pertinent. Like I don't know if Yukimura had like what like his when he was writing his example of this. Maybe he had an interview with someone and like it didn't go well, or like he felt like he was misrepresented.
Yeah,
but then Fee's like, no, like it's like when you call your parents and or like your grandparents and they've seen something on Facebook and they just assume it's true because it's online.
Mm-hmm.
It's a similar vibe to that. And anyway, like it's I guess it's more of like also like bringing, as we'll see, like her uncle again, where she's like, I'm not. Calm down, Mum. I'm not doing anything bad. I'm just breaking the law. That's right. It's embarrassing having a wanted daughter. You should disown me, just like your brother. It's like,
oh,
anyway,
that stings.
Yeah. But I mean, if he's been shown to be more like her uncle in a way,
yeah,
she finds his life way more interesting.
I do really like how the thing that Yuri says about the first victim being the truth, how that plays into what happens with Roy, and what happens to the truth. And does this chapter lead right into? No, it doesn't happen just yet. I was wondering if this leads right into the camping scene, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
But that's definitely like an intentional, I guess, comparison to make how the truth is affected by and like how public opinion influences it, and the truth becomes what the people think. The truth isn't the truth.
Yeah.
But so we get more of Uncle Woodhouse again, and Fee pretty much is talking to him, saying like she wants to grow up just like him, but she says her mom gets really mad when she says that, and God,
yeah.
the way he like looks down at her and then looks away, he's just like ashamed. It's just so good, this character, man. I can't wait to get to the end of it just to talk about it overall.
Yeah.
It is so good.
Yeah, it's super heartwarming. It's like as he looks down, you can almost, it feels like Thor's when he's looking down when everybody's cheering behind him in a way. It's like
it's kind of like
it's the same style, and yeah, and I love this and I think the pacing here is just wonderful. How it flips back and forth. We go back to modern day, and it turns out, well, this character, which, as we're discussing this, he was introduced in previous chapter before the ones we're talking about, but basically one of their friends back at the base helps them refuel and stuff, and then Fee manages to trick Tanabe to get on the ship with them, and then her, which is a funny contradiction. It's like she just rockets off without Tanabe, and then because she cares about it, then Tanabe is like, you're cool, you're still treating me like a child,
Yeah.
which is like true. Like that's what Fee is doing, but Fee's also being like a child herself, and that's what she wants to do. It's like this weird comparison here.
I also think it's really interesting. Just before she says the "Don't treat me like a child," she says, "Fee has more to live for than me. What am I going to say to your son and your husband?" And immediately that makes me think back to how she didn't write her will because she didn't know like what to say to her parents if she died.
True.
And I don't know. I like that. It's just like this little character consistency of like not knowing how like to the way she views death is such a awful thing. Like what words can you even say? And I like how that kind of just carries over here.
True. How dare you? I hate grown-ups.
How old is Tanabe? Because I have no idea.
I think she's like 19 to like
Really?
22. Like she must be just. No, she mentioned she was in university actually once.
Yeah, I
So-
was thinking she was like 20, 23, 24. But she does seem to be a bit younger than that.
Yeah,
Maybe like 20, 21.
maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But I do think it's also interesting, that the fact that Tanabe has been the one the whole time who speaks up and wants to make a difference, and now she's the one being left behind and not being allowed to take part in this. But Yuri and Fee continue off to keep basically trying to do whatever it is they're doing. Because honestly, as I was first reading this, I was having trouble keeping track of like what are they really doing. Like I get they're going out into this restricted zone as a form of rebellion, and they want to do their best to help. But are they just going out and cleaning up debris? What can they even do when they get to a mine?
Yeah.
It doesn't really make much sense to me. But
yeah. Well, this chapter ends on I need an answer. When someone is incapable of acting like a responsible adult, what should she do about it? That's an interesting, like, in a way, like, they kind of recontextualize what we were talking about with the Colonel Sanders of her, like, dismissing his help. It's like, she's trying to find her own path. She doesn't know the right option yet, but she's going to figure it out once she gets there. And I like the names of these chapters are all to do with dogs. We start off, like, you have man's best friend and, like, other ones. So you kind of have the dog arc, I guess is what we should call it. But yeah, so I got a little confused too, but I think what they're going to do, they're trying to like physically deactivate some of these missiles of some sort, or like stop them. Like so the missiles are starting to attack part of the Republic, I think, or something.
yeah, the orbital
So it
mine.
looks like they're firing.
We never see them actually disarm one, so I was just kind of confused what they were actually trying to accomplish here. And
I think we'll get to it.
The futility of it is really kind of the focus anyway. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, especially with is it this chapter? Maybe it is. Yeah, it is this chapter. We'll get to it after the Uncle Roy stuff. But yeah, so this is the camping scene I was talking about, and it's super good. So you have these kids they're out camping with their mom and dad, and the girl I think lost her shoe, and they're kind of out in the woods looking for it, and while they're doing this, they talk about how like what was it, Baba Yaga took the shoe and something. I thought it was just interesting that Yukimura brought up. I don't know.
Neat references.
Is that I know it's not a Japanese folk tale.
Baba Yaga is a Slavic
right?
thing.
I just thought it
So
was interesting,
Eastern
like
European.
Yukimura from Japan bringing up Baba Yaga and stuff. I mean, it's not a huge deal, I guess. I'm sure it's a bigger thing.
I think it would make more sense to be like Sasquatch in this example, but it's a nice
true.
like.
Definitely true, but
it's an interesting like showing that he understands like different cultures. I guess.
yeah, it's just like bring another culture in, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Roy finds the shoe, and he comes up to them, and they get scared because they were just kind of talking about this like scary folktale kind of thing, and he tries to give the shoe, and we can see him stuttering, and it's just kind
I
of
love that,
introduced now. We don't realize the extent of it until later, but he has a lot of trouble talking to people for the first time. He has terrible social anxiety, and he's unable to properly communicate his ideas. And when he brings the shoe here, the kids run off to the family, and you could see the dad starts to approach
Papa.
with the hammer. Yeah,
Some of the
Papa.
shirt. Papa.
We see him approach with
He
the
comes
hammer.
with the hammer.
And I thought this was
Yeah.
super interesting because it ultimately we know the result of this, that he ends up being kind of perceived as this as somebody. The rumor starts spreading of him attacking these kids, right? But when the dad comes with the hammer, because we saw he already had the hammer because he was pitching the tent. It was already in his hand, and now he's coming up. So, what it's interesting to think about for me is, did he at this point, was he approaching Roy with the hammer as a threat to get him to leave because he already perceives him as a threat, or is Roy's anxiety getting to him and he sees this man approaching with the hammer as a threat, and him running away just makes him seem guilty? And we kind of don't get a look into what the family, what the father specifically was thinking at this point. Because he could have just been, approaching to talk to him. He just happened to be holding the hammer.
Yeah, I think. So interesting. I hadn't read this much into this scene. I thought the kids were already running away from him before they saw who it was. That it was Roy here.
I think
That's
they were
what my
too.
assumption was. And so they don't actually know. So the kids are going out there and says, "We saw something in the forest. We saw something in the forest. It's coming here." And so the dad's going to check it out. He doesn't know that it's a human, or if it's they think it's like the kids just think it's Baba Yaga, right? That's what I was thinking. So I don't think he was like, "Oh, I've seen the sketchy man in the forest." It's like, no, Roy runs away from him before they even make contact or eye contact, I think.
I think then again though, with the way the rumor clearly spreads, he must have seen Roy. I think he has to have seen Roy at least.
I think it's also like,
I guess maybe if you say like something tried to attack my
Maybe.
kids, people in this
Yeah.
area would be like, "Oh, that's probably that."
oh, that's true. It's like, I heard that he attacked 2 children that are out camping with their family. Yeah, that's true. So that's probably like somehow that the parents saw him, or like the kids, like a rumor just started spreading. Yeah, I hadn't kind of clocked onto that these like scenes kind of merge into each other. It's like, oh, you mean the Bryant boy? Yeah, so he's called Roy Bryant. Like Kobe Bryant? Is Kobe Bryant? Is that how you spell his last name? Is this what we're going?
I think
Kobe.
actually, hold on. Yeah.
Kobe Bryant, Roy Bryant,
I didn't think about that.
Fee Bryant before she became Free Carmichael. That child has always been a bit wrong in the head, So like these days they're talking about him, and then like they kind of find out that, oh yeah, he's still out in the woods, and they kind of talk about him, and they realize that, his sister. I don't know what Fee's mother's name is.
I don't think we get a name for her at any point.
But yeah, she kind of talks about it, and then I like how what is it? Fee's singing "London Bridge is Falling Down."
Yeah.
My Fair Lady, and that music kind of transitions nicely over into the violin playing.
That's clever. Yeah.
And then like basically they're Fee's mother talks to her mother. So her mother is their mother, or is it their dad?
I think it's the dad.
Huh.
I
That
think.
would make much more sense. No, it says, "Mum, how long are you going to let him live up there?" Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Oh, you're right. Yeah,
Mum, how
no.
are you going to live? He's a grown man who thinks he's Huckleberry Finn, which I also thought that's a neat, like, that may be like a translation thing, like maybe like same thing with Baba Yaga, like the translation team has kind of sort in these like cultural references for us. But
I'd
like,
actually
Huckleberry
think
Finn, that's a good example.
I think that definitely is original text. I think for sure. I think because that story is just so important to what Yukimura is trying to talk about here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Baba Yaga is kind of like an offhand, mention of something, but like the whole Huckleberry Finn it's very important to what he's addressing.
Yeah, So, so my dad once read a little bit of Huckleberry Finn to me, but I actually can't remember it very well. It's a guy like he goes down a river or whatever, like on a like. Have you?
So I never read it, but I
Okay.
know at least what the cultural significance of it is kind of about, and it has to do with
Yeah.
like you know in this area, Mississippi, and the life of somebody like
Oh,
Roy
it's
would be like.
oh, it's Mark Twain. I didn't even know that. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Um. Oh, how about that? I think, I think in the one we read, yeah, the guy who goes down in the river is a black guy, and I think the N word was in it. And my dad didn't say it, but he said we don't say that word. That's when I found out
Based
what the N word was, because it was written in the 1885. So
Mhm.
uh, anyway, that was interesting. Yeah, but Huckleberry Finn is like a guy that's like a wilderness dude. That's kind of how I always think about it.
Yeah.
Even it sounds like it's like you're like a redneck. Huckleberry Finn.
And it's definitely inspired. Like his whole character is definitely inspired by that. So yeah, that's why I think this isn't like a translation thing sprinkled in there.
Interesting.
I
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
think
yeah.
that was there in the original text.
Cool.
But yeah. So he plays the violin, and the grandmother mentions like wanting to find a way if they can get him paid, for playing the violin. It's a way he could potentially fit in to society, right? It's like a role he could play, but he doesn't think of it that way. He doesn't want to play for money. He plays because it's what he enjoys doing. But
Yeah.
the thing the mom says here is so interesting, because like she's been hearing the rumors, and she says, I hope to God he didn't do it. So like it's even getting to her, because she's considering
No.
like maybe he did, like he could have, because the way she knows people think about him, I think it's even getting to her,
Yeah.
and she's like considering it a possibility, which is
Yeah,
sad.
that's so sad. Oh no. How is that? Is that Fee's mother or their mother? Man, it's confusing.
I think
Names.
this is
It's Fee's mother
we have
saying
Fee's
it, right?
mother, the one who's smoking here, and then she's
Yeah, but
talking
she's
to
the one that's saying,
grandmother.
"Oh, I hope he didn't do it." Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she is. Because she says,
Nice.
yeah, I hope to God he didn't do it, because that's what people are saying around town. And yeah, I mean, it's just very blunt, this line. He's an unemployed and homeless black man. People see him as a threat. He's alone. He's a hermit. He's strange. And
Yeah.
I just, man, Yukimura, like, where is this coming from? Just, I'm so curious to know what he's done and what he's, read that has inspired him to this point.
Yeah.
When
What does
writes
he
this
know? And what does
story.
he not know? Yeah.
Because it's just so, like, I've never read a manga, watched an anime where racial dynamics in the United States is addressed in this way, so blatantly and so well executed. It's just almost shocking that he's writing this. It makes me just wonder where did it come from, because like Japan specifically is a very like I would say culturally isolated place. It's very self-isolationist, and I forget what the word is, but it's mostly just Japanese people living in Japan. Like obviously some people from other places do go there, but it's mostly just Japanese people there. It's not like a mix. So it's just so interesting to me that he is writing this for a Japanese audience and addressing this. It almost reminds me of Vinland Saga, how he's writing about the wrongs that have been done to the Native American people. And in a similar way, this is him addressing a different culture and the wrongs that have been done to them. And it's so not manga, so not anime, and yet he's writing it, and I love it.
I think it's just I just want to know, like, how do you write write about such not Christian Western things like Christianity, like the racial dynamics in America, like the Native Americans. Like, what is his experience with like these very more likely outside things? As you said, like where I just want to ask him, like where do you get this information from? Where do you get this?
Yeah.
Because it is like compared to like, say, it's just like this racism here is so subtle. It's like real racism. It's real stereotyping. It's real discrimination. It's real prejudice. It's real assumptions about someone else, presuming what they are like before you know them.
Yeah.
And it is on the nose. It's very, and this is like 2000s as well. You will see a lot of anime try and tackle racial issues, and that's fair. Often it's done in a fantasy world, like
yeah, exactly.
Say like
It's usually a fantasy
86,
thing.
like we're the people with all the silver hair, and we don't like people who don't have silver hair, and it's like, yeah, okay, like I'm sure there can be some nuance there, but like here it's like, this is like a subtle thing where people just assume the worst in you because, first of all, because you don't live in society. You are a bit wacky. You're in the wilderness. You're homeless. You're not unemployed. You're not respected by normal, respectable society things. Also, on top of that, you're black. People will just assume the worst in you.
Yeah.
And even though the police, when they come and see him, like he said, do you have a moment? We have some questions. And like the police come and see him and he's getting interrogated, and like they're generally nice to him. They're intimidating, but they're not like saying out like racist
That's
stuff.
so
it's
interesting
just they're
'cause
just like it's just so subtle and not in the way, and then people just assume it's him.
Very good point.
And
because like there's this
it's-
cartoonish way that this is usually depicted, where
Yeah.
like they will face the camera and tell you exactly what they are thinking about this person, but it's kind of hidden behind this like subtle conversation about like, oh, when we were kids, he's always been like this. When we were kids, we used to bully him for it, that kind of thing. It's just kind of like this, like you said, it's a great point that it's subtle, because I wasn't thinking that it was that subtle. It's very much something that we're supposed to immediately see, but it is subtle in the way that the characters aren't like being depicted in this like cartoonish way.
Yeah, they're not like, well, this guy's black, so he must have done it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Nobody says that, but you see it in their face. You see like that they've already decided the truth of this situation.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily all of them. It's just you feel like there's enough of them that it feels awkward and it feels real. It's not like,
Yep. And that starts to sway public opinion even more.
yeah,
But before we kind of talk more about that interview, we have this. We jump back to Fee and the present again, and this is one of the parts that really confused me. What was even happening here?
super confusing.
Yep.
Yeah,
So they get hit by something. Fee says it's an orbital mine, but it detonated about 7 hours ago, so it should be okay. So they're not about to like be blown up by this mine. But if it's already detonated, wouldn't it be in a bunch of pieces? I don't.
yeah.
Like, is it that these mines fire out something, and it's not like the thing itself explodes? Is that the idea? I guess maybe I just don't know how they work, and that's confusing me, because I'm trying to figure out why is it a surprise to her later when it's in pieces, right? It confused me. I'm upset to hear that you were also confused, because I was hoping you might be able to shed some light on it.
Yeah, no, I have no clue. All I know is that they smash into it. Yuri's like trying to keep it together, and then she looks behind her and realizes it's all destroyed, and they just want to move on.
You're probably right.
But I'm not
that they're
sure
trying
what their goal was in the first
Yeah.
place.
Like, it's huge. We saw how big it is compared to her, right? So what are they even trying to? Like, are they just gonna like take pieces out of it or something? It is.
But that's
really
not the point.
confusing.
That's like, you want to keep stuff together.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah. Either way, the whole point of this is to start wearing the futility of what she's doing on Fee. It's clearly getting to her that they're really not getting anything done out here compared to what is happening. So yeah, I mean, we get the point, but I am really curious what was happening here. But yeah, so now we get Roy getting questioned by the police, and we see the full brunt of his social anxiety. Probably the most heavy-handed thing that they say to him is like, you weren't out in the forest worshiping the devil or nothing, were you? So like this, like that's probably the least subtle thing they do.
Yeah.
But he can't, he just, with this anxiety and the way he doesn't fit in and how distinctly aware of that fact he's just unable to communicate like his innocence. And it reminds me of like play any like social deduction game and you know you're right, but you feel that everybody already has this idea of what's going on, and there's literally nothing you can say, and anything you try to say just makes it seem worse.
Yeah.
It's just like the mob mentality. Like, it's too late. Society has decided the truth. That's exactly what's happening.
They've decided what to believe.
Yep.
And I guess my only issue with this like portrayal of America, and it's not really an issue at all. It's just like this feels like maybe more 1950s to 2010s, I guess, or 2020, right? Like it doesn't feel like a prediction of the future, but more a reflection on the past in a way.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Like this is like 2040 at the latest. I think it's more like 2050. Because Fee's is 2080 when they're living now. Fee's 34 years old, so she's probably around about, it's 2050 when this is happening. So this is 30 years on from us.
And it just doesn't seem
racial justice in America has had leaps and bounds in 30 years. So
I mean, it's still certainly not in the best spot, and I'm sure at this point in the future it also still won't be. That's just something that requires such deep societal change. But I also, a lot of the dialogue here, it really does feel like Yukimura is trying to write a past that wasn't really taking his timeline into account. And I mean, we've seen already the timeline.
I don't think Yukimura really cares about his timeline in this story that much, to be honest.
Yeah. So it doesn't really bother me. It gets the point across anyways. It is just interesting to see that, like, it kind of doesn't really fit.
No.
But and there's kind of more like that we'll talk about later. But they let him go, and they pretty much say, like, you're going to be back here soon. They've already decided. They're just waiting to find the incriminating evidence. But as he's walking away, we have the father of this missing girl come up to him, and he's already decided he did it. He's already decided that he took Roy took his daughter and did something to her. And it reminds me of oh my god, what is the movie with it's To Kill a Mockingbird. Well, I guess it's book too, but just kind of like this innocent guy didn't do anything wrong, but everybody has decided, no matter what the facts are, everyone has decided the narrative, and they're not going to I guess submit. They're not going to go against it. They're not gonna they're not gonna bark uselessly.
Yeah.
And you can see, like, as he's yelling this, we see like these two women standing nearby, or just bystanders overhearing this, and now like that's just to show, like, that's going to spread. They're going to be like, oh, I saw this guy who kidnapped a girl was being like yelled at by the father. Like, that's how it's going to spread. These people just hearing this. And then when Roy, like, the officer tries to say, like, no, he's just in for questioning, like, the protocol, that's what they have to do. But you can see the looks on these guys' faces. They know, they think they know. And
they only see the clickbait title.
Yep.
Effectively.
They've already
decided.
The context.
And
then we're back to the present. Oh, wait, well, actually, this is exactly what I was talking about when I said what Yuri said earlier. The first victim is the truth. This kind of war against him is. That's exactly why she's so disgusted by Sanders, isn't it? It's like she has this childhood memory. Like, obviously, she doesn't remember it that well, but either way, it's kind of ingrained into her. Seeing how the truth is just distorted to villainize,
to fit a narrative,
to fit the narrative, perfect, to make him the villain, and that's exactly what she's so disgusted about. That's it is such a good fucking book, man. Oh my
Yeah.
god. But yeah, we're back to the present now. And again, I still have no idea what they're trying to accomplish. But another mine explodes.
It almost looks like they're using their ship's body to like protect that mine or something to stop it from blowing up.
I mean, is the
I don't
DS-12
know.
really that? Am I supposed to believe it's stronger than a military transportation ship? Like, it's supposed to be a hunk of junk. That's like the.
Yes.
I don't
Well,
understand.
no, well, this is the toy box too. Okay, this is a bit of a newer
okay.
version. Okay, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe she's just. I don't know what she's trying to do, but yeah.
Either way, the important
I
part.
wonder if this will, if this isn't covered in the anime and explained further. I'll be deeply
True.
disappointed.
Yeah, maybe seeing this in motion would really help. That's a good point.
Yeah.
But so we have, oh yeah. So the real point of this, again, it's to reinforce more the futility of it. Like, every mine they come to, whatever they're trying to do, they're unable to do it, and it's just getting worse. And Yuri kind of gives a perspective on where the war is at, and it's essentially trying to be like it's a war that's fought like this one decisive short battle where they're just going to completely overwhelm the like republic or whatever with just by spreading a bunch of orbital mines out there with the goal of eventually taking out this one spaceport that controls their entire supply network, and that would essentially be checkmate. But this is 25,000 tons of potential debris that will go into orbit if this thing is destroyed. And yeah, I mean, that's essentially the point of that of going back to the present again. So then we jump back again to Roy, and he's laying alone in the house. And I like this moment with the bug because earlier the mom, the grandmother, says what was it? She's like, that boy couldn't hurt a fly. And here, like, he grabs at the web and he cups it, and for a second you might think that he squished it, but he lets it go and like lets it be free from the web.
Yeah.
Just kind of just
Free from its chains of society. You know, kind of thing.
No, that's exactly it. But yeah, it's just again to show like he's not like most people. You know, he's very kind. But this scene where he goes fishing, man, this I cried reading this one. Just this page, this whole page of him fishing and kind of breaking down, it's just so good. When Yukimura does this, it's almost like a signature, honestly. When he does these like 3 panels of a character going through a mix of emotions, like progressing into emotion, especially when it's like breaking down into tears like this. You see this in Vinland Saga, and you see this here too. He does this, and it really gets to me every time, man. Just like the way the expression changes, it's so good. It's so good. But
no,
yeah.
It's fantastic, and then you get the silhouette in the background with the dusk happening as he's crocheted and he's sad.
Yeah. But yeah, Sophie comes up to him and asks why he's crying, and he kind of like opens up to her a bit about what he's feeling, and he's saying that he blames himself and he feels like he needs to change so people will like him. He's kind of ready to compromise because he doesn't think he's allowed to be like this, because people will continue to kind of beat down on him for being who he is. And Fee says something really interesting here. She says her mom taught her to look up to the sky when she cries because no one can cry when they're looking at the sky. And it's like this little hint of where maybe her desire to go work in space could have come from. Like she when she wants to stop crying, she'll look up at the kind of like the beauty up there, right? And maybe that influenced her to want to go herself. It's not really
I think
focused
it's
on
also
at all.
like it's also something to do with like gravity. Like if you look up in the sky and try and cry, it's like way harder than like
That's a good point.
have it coming out of your eyes.
I didn't even
like
think about that.
Yeah, it's like a
But yeah, so we see the smoke plume coming out over the tree line.
yeah.
And
And Yukimura draws fire so well
So
here. I
good.
love it so much. It's so dramatic and
loud.
yeah, a running dog and it's, yeah, loud, yeah, and just like all consuming, and yeah, there is a sense. Yeah, there's a great sense of anger and injustice here. Someone burnt down his house because of a misunderstanding. And you just see like a little bit of anger. You see the clenched fist, hashtag clenched fist bad. But like, but
It's the anger.
but then you also got another 3-panel thing where she's like trying to reach his house. Whose is the villain, me or them? Who's really crazy? And then you're like, she tries to reach for his hand. His hand goes further away, and then he starts going away from the hand, and then he walks. He just walks into the bush. He doesn't even go into it after the fire, and you know, it's just
gives up.
expression. I mean, I love. There's just like, it's kind of like there's so much noise. It just gets louder, 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 and then you flip over the page, and it's the explosion of the space orbit or whatever. And yeah, that's just. It's just heartbreaking. And I think what I love about Yukimura's style here is that, not so much here, but in lots of Fee's panel, like, her two eyes are, like, different expressions, and they're, like, combined together to give, like, another expression. There's, like, a few of these here. I just love how... I just wanted to mention, like, once again, how much I love these expressions.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to say, like, my uncle's innocent. The missing girl had just run away from home. They found her sleeping under a highway pass near the river. My uncle disappeared into the forest. No one saw him ever again. Where did he go? Where do people go when they can't deal with this piece of shit world we live in? Where do we go?
And this
And then
panel.
you flip over onto the fiery panel, which, I mean, I forgot about until I read again. And Ox System on the Discord like sent us a picture of like comparing this to Canute's fire, which was quite good.
Yeah.
But this one's like
I immediately
almost
thought of that
more
too.
harrowing, as
It's way
everybody's
more
about they
harrowing.
like coming off the ship to arrest her, and she just doesn't care, and she's just staring at it. Like all she can see is the burning of the treehouse when like the parallel between that and the destruction. And I just love how it like how Yukimura just beautifully builds up this over like the last 2 chapters of flipping back and forth,
and now they combine.
Oh,
Brilliant! You're right.
Yeah, just like, and it's just like good. It's like, it's just lovely plotting. Just like, in a way, like it's a great way to do backstory. You know, let's just like flip back in between before, have a little bit of a. It's not like I mean, I think it does work sometimes, but like sometimes when you just info dump the backstory, then it can feel a little less organic.
Yeah.
But here he weaves it in really nicely.
Yeah, it's kind of like I really like that. They go back and forth. You see the parallels as they continue, and then right at the end, they collapse in on each other. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love it. And so a lot of the focus from here on goes on this idea of Fee wondering where he would go. Like, is there somewhere he could even go? Somewhere not here to get away from this, to get away from how people are treating him, somewhere he can be himself. And she really like struggles with that question from here on. But after the destruction of the space station, we basically Kessler Syndrome has started, and they've lost another orbit. I think they said like throughout high orbit, there's debris just spread around and continues to spread after the destruction. And so Fee's returned to Florida, and she's stopped by these like reporters. And I really like what Yukimura does here. He kind of gives us a bit of exposition by using the reporters' questions, like, oh, these are things he heard about. But it's more of a way to like to tell the reader like what's going on.
Oh, that is true.
Like,
that is so true.
Like, oh, I heard you resigned your commission on the DS-12 voluntarily. Like, okay, so she quit, and now we know that. And then like talking about the debris intensity to give a bit more perspective on what has happened. I just think it's clever, and it also simultaneously serves as a character moment for Fee to show how, you know, this has affected her. Her, like, refusal to give into it and just play into the bullshit, basically.
Yeah, but she's also like, these are like the least realistic characters, because if you're some paparazzi or some press, you're not stopping it when a person says, nope, wrong person.
Yeah, you
They're
know.
going to keep on going. You know, these guys were too easily fooled. They should get fired. That's what I think. They're not nearly annoying enough. But yeah, no, I love that point you made about how the exposition is just done nicely, you know. Yeah, and then you get to see Florida all built up, and they go to the apartment block, and, you know, the dogs are pulling apart Albert. And then he comes home, and Fee's trying to make French toast, and everything's burning. And I love this kind of like split, like just like this simple like gesture of the drawing as she's like scooping onto the plate, and it's just like, I don't know. There's something like quite nice about it, and then Big Papa got all the dog food in the background. It's just nice.
I like how this is set up, like this willingness that they have to just change the roles. Because, like, so far he's been kind of like, you know, the traditional mom, and now, like, she wants to be like, well, she's running away like Woodhouse. She wants to, this is her going off into the woods because she doesn't know what else to do. This is her trying to conform to, you know, the standard, the, like, motherly standards that's kind of expected.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is just so interesting. Like, to compare this to, like you were saying before, with like Hild and Gudrid, and how like they start to pick up on these more traditionally motherly things throughout the story. But here she is just like straight up, unapologetically like, this is not the kind of person she is, and this isn't the kind of person she should become.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like, she's not like, oh, now I'm happy because I'm now a mother at home. She's like, no, I need to go back to space.
Yeah, I really like that. It's like, despite the way he clearly feels about mothers, he's writing a character who's not, like, she is a mother. I would say she is a very caring and a good mother, but she's not that kind of mother that he usually talks about with the kind of things that he thinks makes a mother strong. I just think I think it's very interesting that he's writing a very different version of that here, but still like with the same amount of like respect for her.
Yeah, and I love how they draw, like, it's like she's like, oh, this is my first time doing it, and then it's like, oh, first time, so you're gonna be here a lot, and you're like, she's gonna try. She's like, but then I love like the switch over to her on the motorcycle.
So good. Yeah.
With Albert in the background. She's like smashing through there. And she's like, oh, I love you, Albert, bye. And everybody's like, oh, wow, your mom's so cool. And she said, I love you. You know, like, it's nice. It's like, oh yeah, she's a mother. She's cool on a motorcycle, but she's not like, oh, huff gruff. I don't tell my son I love him or whatever. You know, like, I don't show emotion like a manly man.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, no, it's like, no, I know, I love you. It's like the typical mum thing. It's like, I love you, Albert.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna go on my motorcycle now.
I like
then she's just,
how this moment with the motorcycle
off.
plays into what you were saying earlier about like this this icon of rebellion that she's taking part in. But she's come back here to be complacent and conform.
Yeah, but she doesn't get rid of the motorcycle. She doesn't get rid of the jacket.
Yeah.
Does she smoke? I don't think she probably stopped smoking a little bit, but like, you know, like she's still like a more tomboyish personality type, I guess.
But it's specifically this motorcycle thing is her trying to fight back against it and trying to be that rebel, but she knows it's bullshit, and that's why she has this like anger at the end. The like same eye as Roy.
Yes, yeah. I think that's partly it. Like, when you're on a motorcycle, you're able to break the rules of the road a little bit. You're able to squeeze between this taxi and a bus here. Shown. She's able to kind of like break the motor rules and play life on the edge, and then she just gets kind of angry and then starts doing a wheelie, and like, this is just one of those things. It's like, we just have 3 full pages of her riding a motorcycle, and it's so much up to you to interpret what's going on in her mind and like how she feels about it and all this stuff. And I think this probably gets extrapolated in the final chapter, the barking of dogs. But it's kind of like she's just probably annoyed at the situation and just needs to blow off some steam, kind of like she does in chapter 3.
Okay, yeah. So, well, yeah, let's just go straight into the next chapter then.
Yeah.
So we have her as she started like coaching Albert's baseball team. I guess just something to do.
And baseball comes up before this in this volume, by the way. So we'll get to that later, but
it's surprising how much baseball is talked about in this. I don't know why it's like the sport.
I think Japan just likes baseball.
They do like baseball. That's a good point.
There's always baseball and like even in, have you watched Jujutsu Kaisen? They had like a baseball thing in that. It's like, hang on, well, I thought you guys were like doing.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I forgot.
Fantasy martial arts. Like, no, we got to have a baseball episode. I'm like, yeah, I love baseball episodes. Dorohedoro has a random baseball episode in it. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. Let's have baseball.
But yeah, so Yuri and Tanabe have come to get Fee basically. Like apparently she was on some kind of like
probation or something.
Yeah,
like
probation,
that.
and now it's coming to an end, and she can come back, but she's trying to choose not to, and
she's just pretty bad at being a coach. She's awful. She's hitting the ball, and it's like she's like keep your eye on the ball. You could have had that one, and then she hits another one. And it literally hits the roof of a pavilion, and he's like, if she had more guts, she could have caught that one. She's like just like. She's taking out her frustration on the kids by being like, "You're stupid. Why aren't you catching the ball?"
Yeah, she is kind of doing that a bit. You're right.
She's having it, and she's just then. It's funny, like Tanabe and her have this switch of roles, which I think is the funniest thing. It's like Tanabe is just like, can you not see like there's greater things that there's more that you need to do than just have a little temper tantrum right now playing baseball. And then I think Yuri's always great at this because he like. The way you understand things, sometimes I have a hard time if you're an adult or a child. That's all right. She doesn't have to do it. She doesn't want to. It's nice to see someone her age still be able to make that decision. Like she's just having a little tantrum, which is.
I think this line you said, the way you understand things sometimes it's hard to tell if you're an adult or a child. It's so interesting because the way it plays into what's kind of talked about a bit more later. This idea she says at the end of the chapter about. How Roy shared in his mind shared the mind of a child and the mind of an adult sharing space, and it's so interesting. I want to talk about this a bit more when we get to. Wow, this is a long chapter. It's a dense one. When we get to her, like
there is a lot in
her praying
in this.
But
holy crap!
Yeah, so basically, yeah, she's here to run away, and then we have the stars come in, these shooting stars, but it's actually just debris. And I love how this plays off perfectly the ignorance of the kids. Like they don't understand and they they have like hope when they see this. They're praying for things. And she can only look up with anger. She cannot just be ignorant because she knows. She has the mind of an adult, even though she's trying to have the mind of a child as well. She can't run away from what she knows already, what she knows is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this makes her angry. And that's what leads into her, again, speeding on the motorcycle.
Also, I want to say, I'm pretty sure Yukimura just traces one of these Fee faces for the Knut's like...
Oh my god, you're right.
Hatred towards God. It's like the exact same expression. I love it so much.
That's so good.
Fee just angry towards the heavens. And it's like, what used to like... was like she has this quote like to Uncle Roy about like look up at the stars. What was it again? Like look up at the stars and
it's hard to cry when you're looking at the sky or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's like and now the sky has been like is marred with her failures and tainted and it's no longer innocent. So that's another part of it. Yeah. So she. And so now she speaks on the motorcycle. What do you want me to do? I've worked enough in my life. I'm not responsible for the fate of the world. She's like, I'm sorry, Albert. I'm so sorry. They aren't even shooting stars. Your wishes won't come true. It's just a storm of scrap iron started by a bunch of dumb adults. And it's like, that's a bit of like almost environmentalism in there as well. It's like the kids are adopting a world that's awful because the adults were too lazy to try and do any better.
Yeah.
Like almost.
That's a great point.
It's a mixture of things. Like, and I think that's like what she's just frustrated at her inability to make her son's life better than it was, and just not the fruitlessness of it. And then she almost hits a dog. Classic again, another bicycle. She doesn't quite go into the water over the railings, but she does another bike crash of some sorts. Yukimura seems to like this.
Yeah.
And she's not wearing a helmet, which is kind of nuts.
She had one before, didn't she?
Oh, yeah, no, it falls off. You can see it fall off. Yeah,
Okay.
Okay, so it falls off. She loses the helmet.
I was like
That makes sense.
I was so concerned when this first happened, but I guess it's Planet Test. No one gets actually hurt.
Yeah, no,
I was like,
gets
oh my
hurt.
god, did he just? But she just gets up. She's okay. She's a little
She's got
twisted
she's
an ankle.
bleeding, but the dog's there.
But I really like this this page when she first sees the dog or whatever. The one where she's saying like, "Are you okay, dog? What is this your way of saying sorry?" For some reason, the art on this page is just so. Maybe it's the hair, the way her hair is. It just reminds me of Vinland Saga a lot. The expression on her face in the bottom left panel. This is what I kind of realized. Like, oh wow, Yukimura's art style has really shaped up to what it becomes later.
Yeah.
And the
the
art.
art's so good. The art's so good in this.
Yeah.
It's just a different style, but the fundamental of like great expressions are still there. The great composition and cinematography is still there. I think Yukimura just started going more realistic with his faces and body shapes.
Yeah.
But like, it still was so well done. Like the characters are super expressive. Like this doesn't feel like a downgrade from Vinland Saga to me. It feels just different.
It almost feels like it has more, like it's even higher quality than some of early Vinland Saga. Like Vinland Saga started off being weekly, so that's understandable. But even like later, a little once it becomes monthly in the prologue, even still, like this is just some insanely good art. I really wonder. I haven't really checked how long he spent between chapters at this point. I'd like to check that out at some point.
Yeah, I think particularly with dark hair, Yukimura does really well. I think it's when the blonde hair you can see with like the dad, like that hair looks a little bit weird. He hasn't figured out how he wants to do that yet.
Good point.
But yeah, there's like, and I think Yukimura just knows his like how he wants to frame the camera so well, and he does because this space is such a big part of it. He's able to use black and whites really well in the manga form. All this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is like a super fee thing. Like, she's just very casual about the wreck. She's just like, oh, I'm alive. Guess we don't die so easily, do we? It's like, she's like, oh, I'm just at a gas station, just kind of waiting up, smoking at a gas station. Oh, I just put that together. That's not a good thing. And then the guy just won't even help her out.
Yeah, he says something here.
I'm not sure what this really means, but it's just kind of just being a jerk,
I think it. Well, yeah. So she tries to leave the bike here and ask if she can come back for it tomorrow, and he asks for like $50 to do that, and like she kind of complains about it, like come on, and he says this is how a business works, and that pretty much just read that as this is how the world works. It's that same kind of like this is how things work. Like don't be so ignorant to think that it works any other way. It's like compassion getting overlooked by how it works, and this just makes Fee angry, of course.
And this guy is just an employee, right? He's not going to.
I thought
he doesn't have authority to like save it or whatever.
That's
he
a good
made
point.
his pocket
I wasn't
change.
Sure. Yeah.
Like anyway, I think it's also like $50 isn't like a ridiculous amount, even then, like inflation, come on, like $50 is probably like worth $25.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. Who knows? But like, it's more just like, I think it's a good point you make there. It's more like just the principle of just being like, hey, this is how the world works. I don't care that you've just had a crash.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, here when Fee's like starts pushing the motorcycle down the road, here is the most egregious immersion breaking thing that Yukimura has done. He has predicted the future so well and so realistically. But this man drew hills in Florida. What? I got to this. I was literally staring at the "Welcome to Florida" sign with the literal mountains in the background. And I was like, "Where do you think you are, Yukimura?" I'm sorry. Like, what?
What is this?
I lived in Florida for 4 years when I was in college.
Yeah.
It is the flattest place I've ever been.
It's just swamps, right? That's just what they are.
It's swamps. There's zero elevation, And I don't just seeing this like these grassy plains with hills. Like where do you think you are, man?
Yeah, come on, Yukimura. I actually thought you were going to complain about the car driving on the wrong side of the road here because I got a bit confused which side.
Oh no, he's driving on the right. He's doing it right.
Yeah. But she's pushing on the left side of the road. I don't know why she's pushing her bike like this.
I guess so.
Give me some anxiety.
Normally, you would do it on on the shoulder, but you are traditionally supposed to, walk against the traffic so you can see what's coming.
True.
And it's essentially that. But I guess it would be bad framing to have her on that all the way in the shoulder. Pretty much, it kind of looks cooler to have her near the middle.
Maybe.
But it looks like she's leaving Florida. Like she's walking past the Welcome to Florida sign. I don't know what the goal of this is. The hills, man, they bother me. But yeah. So she ends up sitting down with the dog, and I really like this moment. We'll talk about it later when we actually do the rest of the volume. But is this the same church as the last chapter?
Oh, I did not think about that.
It looks the same, and it's kind of the same kind of.
It is the same vibe.
It's like a little coincidence.
Same vibe.
But
dude, I need to read this last chapter again.
Sure, but yeah. So she's sitting down at the tire, and again she's thinking like about her uncle. Where did you go? And yeah. So okay, this is the part I really want to talk about. So we have the dog, and she sees that the dog has a really, really tight collar on. It's like really choking it. And I like how she says, "Oh, your collar." She doesn't say, "Oh, your collar is too small." She says, "This is the collar for a puppy," right? So this immediately, like on my second read through at least, this made me think like this is some kind of like symbolism as like she has had like it's not just a small collar, it's a puppy's collar. It's something for a child in dog terms. So I think her like kind of trauma from what happened with Roy is essentially like this really tight collar around her that has made her conform to society. It has made her it has changed how she approaches fitting in and complacency. And she's had this really tight collar around her all this time, and she's kind of taking it off now. She takes it off for the dog. I didn't have that full thought put together, but as I was trying to explain it to you, it all kind of came together. This has been the collar that has been restricting her all this time, and she's finding out how to let it go now.
Yeah, I was actually more wondering, it's like, you could almost say, like, because you said as a child, I hadn't actually thought about this before you mentioned it now, but like it could be almost taken the other way. I like your reading of it more, but like it's the collar of youth, and as this puppy is like almost chained down by being a child a little bit, or I don't know, somehow like something like almost like giving extra context to the theme of this whole part of the book is like, like now she's realizing that she can't just be a child and chained down like by that childhood, or like she needs to be free of her of being a child and go back up to space in a way. I don't know, but no, I actually think with what you're saying, like I think the fact that she's thinking about the uncle and about what happened there, that collar being too tight from her youth, I like that reading more.
Yeah, specifically her saying that must have hurt for a long, long time. With that Yukimura, like kind of the look on her face there is like that introspective expression he always does. So that's what made me think it. But yeah, I'm glad we talked about it because that helped me piece it together a little bit better.
Yeah. Also, small clothing detail that I really liked. I like how, because Fee's sitting down with that and she's wearing a belt, her trousers at the back, if you look at later when the cars rushing by her, it's like dipping down. I've noticed that like when I've sat down with a belt on compared when I don't. Like, anyway, it's just one of those like small artistic details. So I'm like, oh, that's actually how jeans look. That's how, like, I love how he draws clothing. Like, it's like very realistic.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Now this part, this is the big one. So she looks up at the debris in the sky, and she starts to think like she gets it. She knows why people look up to the stars and want a shooting star to wish on, and she knows that it's just debris. She knows what the reality of the situation is, but she goes to start praying to maybe wish upon these stars. And then the dog barks at her, and this kind of snaps her out of it. And it's just kind of like to say, like, she can't go back into the ignorance of being a kid. This isn't what it's about. It's not about going back and going back to the mindset of a child and being ignorant and not really understanding things. It's about understanding anyways, and then trying to question things and trying to rebel against the things that don't make sense, even though you get it. And she tries to kind of revert back into that ignorance, but she can't, because it really is too late. She knows what she needs to do. She knows like the reality of the situation, and she can't just ignorantly return to a normal life where she doesn't have this sense of duty.
Yeah, that's great. I also think another thing is like she's like, geez, you've got a big bark, boy. It's like she was complaining about the dogs barking at the beginning of this arc, and now she'd bring the loudest woofer back home. So like, yeah, it shows like a growth there, and yeah, and she has like the introspective like eyes and stuff where like her hair like fades out and stuff. I love all that stuff, and then she follows the dogs home.
I swear to God, like, man, I love reading this. I love seeing like these little paneling choices that are just literally like a signature for him. Like you see all of these like, I don't know, methods of paneling, because I think we've talked about this before, how Vinland Saga has a very very simple form of paneling. It doesn't really try to do anything crazy with the panels, but it's just done so well, and it's just like the perfect normal paneling.
Yeah, and Yukimura is drawing like very intricately, like motorcycles. Like I reckon, like this motorcycle is so well drawn. Like he's very intricate with how it feels so 3D and like well realized, which I really like. And so he must have like had an actual motorcycle he's taking pictures of and stuff. But then I like but then Fee like still feels like Fee because she like talks to the dog in a funny way, and it's like, stop woofing at me and help me push this bike up here.
Yeah.
And then she has a look, and the sun is rising over the hill.
The hill in Florida.
City. Yeah. Yeah, true. With all the skyscrapers.
I think this panel is beautiful and stuff, but like there's like no buildings in the city. There's skyscrapers, but it's supposed to be a city, but like
I think there's like morning fog in the valley or whatever, something like that. So obscuring maybe a little bit of the detail. I think
hope
that's
so, because it just looks like there's two roads.
Yeah.
It is a bit weird, and when I think about it, we reading Vinland Saga, I don't think I've ever seen Yukimura draw a big cityscape, because he just has these small villages to work with.
Yeah.
So it is kind of just weird, and going uphill and then downhill in Florida. What are you talking about?
But this sunrise also reminds me of the end of chapter 3 when she's in the thing. She's like the sun is rising over top. Anyway, she turns up home. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's just the day I've had, but for some reason this sunrise is the prettiest I've ever seen. It's an interesting introspective.
Yeah, and then she's kind of resolved to get back to work. She knows what she needs to do. She knows she can't run away like Roy did. She has to kind of stay and face it. I think a couple pages back when she after the big page of her looking over the cityscape, I think for the first time in this whole story we see her cry a little bit. Has there been any other point where we see her cry besides when she was a kid? I can't think of any point. I guess she doesn't have much to cry about compared to right now. But yeah, like the little like tear coming down her face in the top left corner of the page.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's good.
She brings the dog back. I think how this all started with her telling Al that you can't keep bringing dogs back, and then of course
Yeah,
she
then
comes
she brings
back
back the dog,
with a
yeah.
dog herself, and of course named him after her uncle.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. And then this last page has like literally not left my mind because I'm trying to figure out what this last part really is. But she thinks to herself, "Uncle, where are you now? Do you still have the mind of a child even now? Does it share its space with the mind of an adult?" And then kind of just, yeah, I, for the life of me, cannot figure out what that I is supposed to really be. But, I really like this idea of, like, the mind of a child sharing its space with the mind of an adult. It's, like I said before, you can't just go back and revert to the mind of a child. You need to allow them to share a space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you become sort of like a well-rounded person. You know, you've grown up, you've learned. But Tanabe is the example of this. Like Yuri says before, I can't tell if you're the way you say things. I can't tell if you're a child or an adult. Like she has this childlike willingness to speak out against things that most adults just kind of are complacent to. But you know, she does it in a way that's like knowledgeable. It's not out of ignorance. It's about like this, like I see the problems here and I'm going to point it out to you and make you face it. And yeah, it's like it just makes it so interesting. But do you have any, I guess, additional perspective on what this last sort of monologue is about?
I was very confused. I mean, I think the pretty side, like, I think the whole sunrise thing beforehand makes sense because like it doesn't make sense, but it's the prettiest I've ever seen. It's like, yeah, this whole kind of part of the story. So it does things don't always make sense. And that's okay. You know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like she's still kind of grappling with it, but she also has come to terms with it in a way.
Yeah. Do you still have the mind of a child even now? Does it share space with the mind of an adult? And it is this sense like she can be an adult but still be a child and not lose. It's like she's gone from one extreme of not remembering her, you know, her rebellion, fighting like a rebellion, but then she goes and forgets her responsibilities. It's like balancing rebellion and responsibilities. How about that for a title? Yeah.
Well, okay. Yeah.
I don't know what the I means.
Yeah, the I. That's what sticks with me. I wonder if I'll come up with something. But I think the way I see it, she's like, I would say thinking about how she has come to that point where she's able to coexist with both her willingness to rebel against the things that don't make sense and her understanding of why things are the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
And she's sort of been able to, I guess, do what Roy really wasn't able to do because of like his anxieties and all that. He wasn't able to kind of face what was being done to him, and he had to leave. And she tried to leave, but she just couldn't because, you know, she knows what she needs to do, and she's kind of resolved to do it. And yeah, that ends Fee's kind of arc in the middle of this volume. Again, man, the cultural awareness that Yukimura has for things so far outside of what he would experience day to day is just the most intriguing thing about him as an author. And it's just the way it's handled here, the way just Roy is an incredible character, man. Like everything with him has just stuck with me. So like honestly, I would say some like this whole mini arc with Fee is some of the most like I guess profound stuff in the whole series. It has stuck with me since finishing it. Like obviously the ending also really stuck with me, but this has not left my head, and it's just so funny how we never even would have thought this would have happened.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts about Fee's arc here?
Fee good, Roy good, Planetess goated. Yukimura, Goat King.
Buy Planet Test, buy physical, read Planet Test.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So yeah, that's the first part of the volume. Again, we had to kind of split this up in a bit of a weird way. Just the way the story was structured, it made the most sense to not split Fee's kind of story down the middle, or else thoughts would have been pretty incomplete by the end of this,
Yeah.
I'd say. And even though, yes, it does play into the overall themes of Planet Test, I would say the introduction chapters of this volume and the final chapters of this volume have a bit more of a cohesive idea that combines them a bit. So yeah, next time we're going to talk about the ending. We're going to talk about just the whole story as a whole. We're going to have overall thoughts on the whole thing. And yeah, I'm super excited for that, man, because I think this next batch of chapters we're going to talk about has my favorite chapter in the whole, the whole
Okay,
series.
nice. Yeah, I need to... These chapters stuck in my mind a little less, but
Yeah.
re-looking them, I reminded, so I'm very, very ready to have another look at them. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Yeah, that should be pretty soon. I'm not going to wait too long to record that one. Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about that. So, man, again, as always, thank you so much for joining me, Jarkey. Literally,
worries.
I don't think I ever would understand this story as well as I do without sharing this kind of read-through experience with you. So,
We are aiding each other.
Yeah,
We're aiding each other a lot.
Exactly.
And we hope people listening have also been aided, despite our massive ramblings.
Yeah.
Watch this on 2x speed.
Yeah, if you want to tune in this Planet Test video and listen to a half an hour of talking about Vinland Saga.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, yeah. Everyone, check out Jarkey Bacon. Go watch all of his videos. And also,
I am the goat.
I think last time we recorded, we talked about potentially doing a discussion on the Vinland Saga Season 2 anime with Elite Ari and Kyle Entertainment, and we did end up doing that. So go to what is it? Kyle's second channel called
Secondary and Ian Entertainment.
Secondary Entertainment. Yeah,
It's
go check that out.
a bit hard to find. Just go to Kyle's channel and you'll find it.
You'll find it that way. But yeah, we had a really good discussion there. If you like hearing us talk, if you sat here for 3 hours listening to us talk, I'm sure you'll be happy to hear us talk a bit more. So yeah, definitely go check that out, because I think we said a lot of interesting stuff there. Do you have anything else you wanna close out with, man?
No, sir.
Okay, then we're good to go. Thank you for watching, everyone. As always, if you sat through this whole thing, you're awesome. I hope our discussion, like Jarkey said, I hope our discussion has kind of helped you piece together the story a bit better, because I really think this is a story that benefits so much from additional read-throughs, and its length in that way really is to its benefit. It's such a rereadable story. So yeah, if you're not reading it yourself, definitely go for it, because it's incredible. It really is. Yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys soon for part 2 of this volume. Bye.
Bye.